I had it in the chargers. I'll put it all away.
All right,
Good morning, Your
let's go ahead and set forth our appearances and good morning to everyone. We'll start first with the plaintiff, then we'll move to the defense.
Morning, Your Honor. Eric Pepperman, Will Kemp, and Eddie Parker for plaintiffs.
Good morning, Your Honor. Joel Adu and Eric Freeman on behalf of the real water defendants. Mr. Hoffman is under the weather, but he's going to be trying to monitor us remotely.
And that's fine. Okay, anyway, I think we had a couple of issues to deal with this morning, and I'd like to get it done, so maybe we can get the jury here on time. Start
Sounds
over.
great, Your Honor. We're ready to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. I apologize if I could add, Brianna Switzler is also here for plaintiff.
All right. Good morning, then. And it's my understanding we had essentially two issues. One is the joint, and one is also the summary judgment motion. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
They're essentially the same.
They are. And I don't mind telling everyone this. I remember when this issue first came out regarding the motion for summary judgment and the merits of the motion for summary judgment as it pertained to decrease in life expectancy. When I first heard the issue without reviewing the points and authorities, the first thing that came to my mind was medical malpractice cases and loss of chance. And the reason why I bring that up, I mean, that was one of the first med mal cases I worked on from a defense perspective. It dealt specifically with loss of chance. And I know we have Perez versus Las Vegas Medical Center as one of the similar cases dealing specifically with that issue. And interestingly, because I pay a lot of close attention, and when I said loss akin to loss of chance, Mr. Parker smiled when I said that. I remember everything. I'm watching everything, right? And so I'm looking at this, and when it comes to loss of life expectancy, I can't see any reason why that wouldn't be a potential damage claim if you have the facts to support it and the expert opinion to support it, right? It's very much similar to loss of chance in a failure to diagnose cancer case.
Yes, Your Honor. That's plaintiff's position. We cite numerous cases in the opposition that involve cases analogizing these damages with loss of chance as essentially the same or the other side of the coin.
Right.
And
didn't I say that in court, open court? I think I even said that, something, I said that.
yes, Your Honor, you did. And I didn't remember that until after reading the case law on this issue, and when it led me to the case law that says it's essentially loss of chance, it's the same thing, I remembered, Your Honor, making that precise comment, the first thing that you said on this issue, and once again, you quickly got to the heart of this issue before anyone else did.
Mr. O'Doul, what do I do with that, sir? Because we clearly, Nevada has recognized loss of chance type damages.
Good morning, Your Honor. Yes, Joel Adu on behalf of the real water defendants. Excuse me. Perez versus Las Vegas Medical Center was the case that everybody cited. And obviously it's a medical malpractice case, and this is a strict liability case. Your Honor, all the cases that talk about loss of chance that were cited by both parties are medical malpractice cases. There was the one Las Vegas case, and then the plaintiff cited cases from South Carolina. They cited cases from basically all the jurisdictions that have adopted loss of chance, whereas the moving party has cited cases from jurisdictions that have not adopted loss chance, including California. Your Honor.
And you know what's fascinating about that? And I think in this case I did have a comment earlier where I think there was a statement, no, it was a statement made by the Ninth Circuit that Nevada will follow California when it comes to tort type cases. And what did I say? That's not true, right? Didn't I say that? Wasn't it in this case?
You did, Your Honor. You said Minnesota, and we couldn't find
Well,
Minnesota.
no, I think I said not Minnesota. I think the example I used was Montana.
Montana. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I misspoke.
Right. I mean, I just and I don't mind telling you this. I am kind of like a student of the law, and I do read these cases.
You do, Your Honor. We had looked for Montana and didn't find it.
Yeah.
But in particular, we didn't find it in Montana. We didn't find it for strict liability.
Now, you might not find it just for strict liability per se, but just in reading cases over the years, it appears to be certain jurisdictions we kind of pull cases from. And in a general sense, people think Montana, the Montana Supreme Court, might be, when it comes to tort cases, for example, they might be conservative, but lo and behold, you read their decisions, they're very much not conservative. And I wouldn't call them progressive, but they clearly, I think, would follow what would be considered a modern trend as far as tort law and tort liability and damages are concerned. And that's kind of what we do here in the state of Nevada. So what do I do? Because we do have Perez versus Las Vegas Medical Center right on point with this. And it's a 1991 Nevada Supreme Court case, and it's Nevada. What do I do with that?
Well, Your Honor, it's Nevada medical malpractice.
Yes.
That's the issue, and it has not been adopted in any case in Nevada that we've seen or that the plaintiffs were able to cite for strict liability and tort. And certainly there are differences between medical malpractice and strict liability and tort. There are policy considerations why strict liability and tort plaintiffs don't have to prove negligence. And those policy considerations could go either way. I could see the court saying, well, those policy considerations mean the burden of proof is less, therefore, we're going to allow them to recover for lost chance. But on the opposite side of that, Your Honor, is those policy considerations are less because plaintiffs can recover for their damages, their consequential damages. And in this case, they want to go beyond that. They want to recover for lost chance. The second issue we have that...
Now, here's my question, though, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, and everyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but the tort per se doesn't matter when it comes to determining what the damages are. For example, you can have an MVA, you can have a premise liability case, you have a medical malpractice case, you can have a product liability case. At the end of the day, when it comes to personal injury and damages, it appears to me it would all be the same.
I understand the court's position.
No position, that's my observation.
I do that every time, and I apologize.
Because I'm not an advocate. Don't I always push back on that?
You do. And,
Yeah.
and I have said that probably 3 or 4 times, and you have corrected me, and I appreciate that, Your Honor. I appreciate the court's observation. And the question that we believe is presented to the court is, does the court extend that to strict liability? We think there's a distinction there because of the policies behind strict liability in tort, as well as the proof in strict liability in tort. There's a second issue that I might as well touch on while I'm here for the sake of efficiency. We had pointed out that the basis of Dr. Hudson's opinion was the words that assuming the exercise of reasonable care by Mr. Taquante Henry and adherence to medical recommendations and medications, this would be his lost chance, so to speak, or this would be his life expectancy. We understand that's probably an issue of fact, but he didn't use the magical words. This is an expert who didn't say to a reasonable degree of probability because no one can predict how long somebody is going to live. We took issue with one of the other plaintiff's experts for trying to predict how long somebody was going to live or how somebody was going to do, or basically to try and predict the future. No one can predict the future, and that goes back then to the policy considerations behind loss of chance. If you can't predict the future to a reasonable degree of medical probability, what is the burden of proof for loss of chance? We think in the medical malpractice field, it certainly has to be beyond, or it has to be to a reasonable degree of medical probability, and the expert has to use the magic words. Here, the expert said, assuming. And there's all sorts of jokes about what happens when you assume. But if the court finds that as an issue of fact, we will raise that when Dr. Hudson testifies. I don't know if it's going to be Friday or early next week. We'll raise it next week, but we understand the observations of the court. I think actually the briefing was kind of fun, so we appreciate the opportunity to address this issue.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pepperman.
Your Honor, there's no dispute regarding the loss of life expectancy. The median, the average, 50% of people aren't alive 15 years, 12 to 15 years after a liver transplant. So there's no dispute. The question here isn't whether Mr. Henry has lost decades off his life. It's, both experts agree that he has. It's, is he allowed to compensation for that loss, for that harm under the law? And clearly, the answer is yes. If Nevada follows the loss of chance doctrine, which every case that has similarly adopted the loss of chance doctrine has held, in many cases, word for word specifically, this is McNeil v. United States, the deprivation of a normal life expectancy is a necessary and proper element of damages. Doesn't matter the tort. If you suffer the harm, you're entitled to compensation for loss of life expectancy damages. And notably, Your Honor, in the reply brief, Real Water makes the point that, well, that McNeil case, the reason they allowed loss of life expectancy as an element of damages is because that's a South Carolina case, and South Carolina follows the common law of England. And they say, notably, plaintiffs have failed to show that Nevada follows the common law of England. Well, Your Honor, it's not whether we show it or not, it's does Nevada follow the common law of England? And the answer is yes, and it's in a statute, NRS 1.030, quote, the common law of England, so far as it is not repugnant to or in conflict with the constitutional laws of the United States or the constitutional laws in this state, shall be the rule of decision in all courts of this state. And so the courts that rely on the common law of England to allow loss of life expectancy, that reasoning applies exactly in this case because Nevada follows the same law by statute. Nevada applies the loss of chance doctrine. They clearly allow for full and fair compensation for personal injury damages. This is a loss of life expectancy, undisputed. There's no basis whatsoever to say that Nevada law does not allow these damages. And for all those reasons, Your Honor, we'd ask that the motion and joinder be denied.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Your Honor, in response to that, we would point out that Nevada law also caps damages in medical malpractice cases. Plaintiff just cited the statute where medical malpractice cases, non-economic damages are capped. And so, again, medical malpractice is not the same as strict liability in tort. The fact that it's recoverable in medical malpractice and that there's a cap is a pretty significant fact that also bears observation by the court.
All right, thank you. And just for the record, I just want to make a couple comments. When it comes to the damage calculation, and it's tort-based personal injury cases, it doesn't matter whether it's a premise liability case, food poisoning case, medical malpractice case, motor vehicle accident, and the whole litany of personal injury claims. When it comes to the damage component, they're all the same, right? If you need future surgery as a result of malpractice, you get, potentially you can put that in front of a jury. If you need future surgery as far as a fall and or motor vehicle accident, it's the same component and requirements. Just as important too, we can't overlook the fact that we're talking about a preponderance of the evidence, more likely true or not. That's the appropriate standard. And to me, this one seems pretty clear in this respect. And without even reading the briefing, once the issue was raised, I made a comment in open court after just listening to a couple of statements by counsel. Hey, isn't that akin to the loss of chance doctrine? Right? And I guess I was on point as far as that observation is concerned. This one's a pretty straightforward call for me. I'm going to deny the motion.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. All right. So, Mr. Kemp, you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll give you a chance to get set up, and I'll step down and let me know when you're ready, and we'll get started. Wait, Tori hasn't yet.
So, April just said that juror in seat number 7, Mr. Ira Carter, just remembered that he has surgery on Wednesday the 16th.
The 15th?
The 16th.
16th.
We know what time?
I'm not sure. Does he?
What kind of surgery is it?
I think maybe we should
Any questions you have in that regard, Mr. O'Doul?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I couldn't.
Any questions regarding how we should handle this issue with this?
I'm fine with deferring it, and I'll talk to plaintiff's counsel to see if we can work around it. I don't have initially any problem working around it. I don't know if that sets us back too far in our schedule. We have to take a dark day, we do.
But I want to give both of you an opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank
All right. And so we're 11 o'clock, right?
We are missing 3 jurors.
Okay, and when they get here, we'll get started. Go, step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is back in session. You may be seated.
All right, just go ahead and make sure we have our appearances set for the record.
Joel Ledoux and Eric Freeman on behalf of the Real Water Defendants.
All right, and so counsel, are we ready to proceed with opening statements?
Yes, Your Honor, one minor point, Mr. O'Doul and I have prepared jury notebooks that have 4 exhibits from the plaintiff and 5 from the defendants. If it's okay with the court, could I have Mr. Parker hand them to the jury when they come in?
Once they're seated, yes.
Thank you.
All right, and anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, I was thinking, Mr. Kemp, we'll go an hour, and then give a break, and then we'll come back.
Okay. All right, come on.
Yes. We're ready to bring them in.
Yes, Your Honor.
I think Mr. Peppermint may be in the restroom, Your Honor. Yeah, I think we can bring them in and come in a second, but I just wanted to point that out.
All right. Do you want to wait for him, or?
That's right.
Oh, here he is. He's back.
Good.
Ready?
Yes, we are.
All rise for the jury. All jurors are present, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
You may be seated.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I just want to say good morning to everyone. All right, and right now, we're going to begin very shortly opening statements in this case. And remember, we talked about them. And so now we're getting to the trial itself. And there's a couple of just high points I want to hit before we get started with the trial, because what we're going to start is opening statements. And under our system, the plaintiff goes first, and the defense goes second, so you understand that. And there's a couple of points that are very important to just understand as far as how the trial proceeds. And as we start the trial and after opening statements, the plaintiff will start their case in chief. And that's when they put all their evidence on. You understand that? Now, I want you to remember this: after the plaintiff finishes their case in chief, then the defense puts their case on. Does everybody understand? That's how that works. And you're permitted, of course, to take notes. You all have your notebooks and your pens, and they work, I assume. And remember this, too, as jurors, you do have rights. And you're sitting here, and you're going to be the ultimate fact finder in this case. And if for whatever reason you can't hear someone, you have a right to raise your hand and have them speak up, or we can make some accommodations where you can hear. You understand that? Very important as far as that's concerned. Just as important, too, you're permitted to ask questions during a witness's testimony. And understand the thrust and focus of that are not questions for me, not questions for counsel, but questions for the witness. Do you understand that? And it should be relevant to the case, but whatever you feel is relevant, that's fine with me. But there's a format we follow when questions are asked of a witness. What you do is you write your question out, on your pad, put your name and badge number, and then raise your right hand. And it can be at any time. and the court martial will come to the question. And ultimately, when that witness is finished, what we'll do is she will bring the questions to me before the witness is released. And then what I do is I review the questions with counsel to see if there's any objections, right? And understand this, it doesn't matter whether the question is coming from the jury and or the lawyers, if there's an issue. And sometimes it has nothing really to do with the facts of this case, but we have rules in place that must be followed. You understand that? But I want you to have confidence in this respect. If you ask a question and it's written down and I don't ask it of a witness, don't let that preclude you in the future from asking other questions. You understand? Because it's not personal. Because if I make a question, if I make a determination to decide not to ask a specific question, there's sometimes nothing wrong with the question, but the rules might prevent me from doing that. And it's the same thing with the lawyers, because lawyers will ask questions, the other side objects, and I sustain the objection, that question doesn't stand. Same thing, understand? But the bottom line is this: once the witness leaves the stand, we're not going to call him back. You understand that? And so the question is for the witness, not for me, not for the counsel. Everybody get it? And we want to make sure you do that and understand that. Also, remember, at the end of the day, what's your job and responsibility is going to be in this case. You are the fact finder, right? You decide what the facts are. I will give you, at the close of the case, the jury instructions. And remember, we talked about those, and that's your roadmap, right? It's going to tell you what your duties and responsibilities are as jurors, but just as important too, it's going to tell you everything you need to know regarding, there's going to be a definition of preponderance of the evidence. There's going to be all sorts of definitions, and which are the law. You understand? But it's been broken down for you so you can follow that. And I don't mind saying it. Typically, the instructions will cover all law in this case. You understand that? Don't need to go to any other source at all. It'll be explained to you, and you have a right to rely upon that. Another thing, and this from my perspective, I just want to make sure you understand specific issues regarding my conduct. For example, at the end of the day, I might sustain more objections for one side or the other. That doesn't mean I favor anybody. Understand that? Look at it, what am I? I'm the umpire. And I'm here to call balls and strikes, right? And it doesn't matter, for example, if a pitcher gets 10 pitches in a row to the plate, what does the umpire do? Call some strikes. And so it's an issue-by-issue basis. No need to tally, no need to do any of that. I'm here, I have my chest protector on, and I have my face mask on right now, right? That's what I am. I'm the umpire. Let's look at it from that perspective. Just as important, anything I may say or do should give you no indication as to who should prevail in this case. You understand that? That's your sole decision, collectively, as a jury. You got it? Just want to make sure we're there. And sometimes I take notes, right? And it depends on the witness, and I might be looking for specific technical legal issues and their responses, but whether I take notes or don't take notes, that has no indication as to the importance of that witness's testimony. It's up to you to decide, you understand? So all I'm saying is don't cue on me on any issue. You got that? You know, because you're making the decision, not me. Let me see here. I guess last but not least, you know, when it comes to trials, essentially, under our system of jurisprudence, it's a search for the truth, right? To find out what really happened. And you decide what's true and what's not true. And that's the power of the juries under our system of justice. All right, and this one other point, and as you go through this case, and there'll be jury instructions on this, but I think sometimes, you know, unless you're learned in the law and you're a lawyer or a judge or something like that, it's important to understand that, you know, there's different types of evidence that come in, right? There is, and I might have touched upon this. But here's the best example I can give you. If we all go to sleep tonight collectively, and we wake up in the morning, and you look up and down the street, and it's wet, what does that tell you? It rained, right? But you didn't see it rain, did you? See where I'm going on that? And here's my point. There's two types of evidence, direct and circumstantial. Direct evidence would be seeing it rain, right? Looking out the window, it's raining. Circumstantial evidence, we use circumstantial evidence every day, but we don't really call it that. But if you wake up in the morning and it's wet, you know it rained that night, right? You don't know exact time, but it did rain. But here's my point. Under the law, you can give equal weight to both, right? It's up to you to decide what to do with the evidence. You understand that? I just want you to know that. There'll be jury instructions on that. But sometimes that comes up. Make sure if you can hear a witness that you raise your hand and you let me know, because that's important from your perspective. And so anyway, I think it's time for us to get started. It's my understanding, and we proceed, Mr. Kemp will go first, then after Mr. Kemp will be Mr. Parker, then Mr. Oden. Right? And it's going to take us a few hours to go through all of this. If for whatever reason you need an assistance as far as a break, this is not an endurance test. Right? We will accommodate you. Okay?
Your Honor, may I approach the jury and pass out the binders that both the plaintiffs and the defendants have agreed upon?
And just so you know, the lawyers have agreed and they are prepared what's called jury notebooks. And they put these together for your convenience throughout the case. And it's my understanding there's one for each panel member. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, and so I'm going to have Mr. Parker pass those out right
We're
there.
hoping so. I just look at Ms. Whistler.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, what we'll do, we'll probably go to about 12:15, then we'll take our lunch break. And then we'll come back, and I anticipate Mr. Kemp won't be done before then, but we'll take it. Okay, Mr. Kemp, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Will Kemp, K-E-M-P. I'm one of the attorneys for the 15 plaintiffs, along with Mr. Parker, Eric Pepperman, and Brianna Switzler. At this time, we're going to go through the opening statement. And I want to start by showing you some hospital pictures that raise a serious question. These are 6 of the plaintiffs. And we're going to go through each one of them in more detail, but all these people were hospitalized. And in late 2020, there was a medical mystery that involved dozens of Nevadans, including these people. And it took the public health authorities months and months of investigation to provide some answers. So let's start with the medical mystery. Many of the 15 plaintiffs in this case, and you have the jury notebook, that's a picture of each one of the plaintiffs. And like I said, I'm going to go through them in a second. But many of the 15 plaintiffs in this case, 5 babies, dozens of other people in Clark County, they were rushed to hospitals with acute liver failure. And the big mystery is what was forcing all of these healthy young people to have to go to hospitals with acute liver failure. So that's the first question we have to answer. What happened to these people? And to answer this question, we have to start with some medical facts. There are 3 major critical medical emergencies that can suddenly put people into an intensive care unit. One, you're probably familiar with, heart attacks. 805,000 people every year go into hospitals with heart attacks. Next, Shane. 2 strokes, an attack on the brain. Same number, approximately 800,000 go into the hospital every year with a stroke. Finally, liver attacks, an attack on your liver. This is a relatively rare thing. Only 2,000 persons per million a year go into the hospital with acute liver failure. And let me repeat that slowly. Each year, there's only 10 cases of acute liver failure in the entire United States for every million persons. And we call acute liver failure, you're going to hear us use the acronym ALF, A for acute, L for liver, and F for failure. So we're going to be talking about acute liver failure, or ALF. Means the same thing. This is a case about acute liver failure. And before introducing you to the 15 plaintiffs in this case, let me give you a brief explanation of acute liver failure. This is where the liver is in the body. The orange is approximately the liver, and that's the approximate shape of the liver. And this is another shot of the liver. Let me explain what the liver does. The liver is one of the most important organs in the body. It does approximately 500 different things. Some of the critical functions that the liver performs are detoxification. It takes toxins out of the body, and then it also processes proteins and biochemicals. If you lose your liver, you cannot live, okay? If someone doesn't have a liver, they die. And there's a number of reasons for that. One, blood will not properly clot. The liver makes what's called a liver enzyme, or a blood clotting enzyme. If the liver's not working, your blood does not clot properly. We're going to talk about that in a minute. 2, toxins and chemicals will build up in the body. And the one we're probably going to be talking about most is ammonia. So that is the toxin that builds up if the liver's not working. Next, Shane. If your liver's not working, all the defenses against infections fail because, again, you're not making the antibodies and enzymes you need. Next, Shane. And then you get swelling, okay? If the toxins are not cleaned by the liver, they have to go somewhere. One of the places they go is into the brain. That's called brain swelling. There's a big medical term for it. It's called encephalopathy. You're going to hear that a lot. You're going to see the medical records where a lot of the 15 plaintiffs had encephalopathy. And the reason they have encephalopathy is the liver stops working. It can't process the ammonia. Ammonia's got to go somewhere. It goes up into the brain, and then it causes swelling. And when you have brain swelling like that, it causes confusion. You just can't function. And we're going to talk about some of the symptoms the plaintiffs had. So the defendant in this case is Real Water. They made an alkaline water product. This is one of the 5-gallon jugs. I don't know if you could see it. I don't want to, well, I guess I would have picked it up. Okay. So this is one of the littler bottles of Real Water. They made 3 different types. One was a 1 liter, one was a half liter, one was a 1.5. That's the product that's involved in the case. Now, Real Water made certain claims about its product. Shane? Oh, excuse me. I'm getting off script here with Shane. When all of these persons started getting acute liver failure and going to the hospital, there was a huge investigation started. It was led by the Southern Nevada Health District, which we're going to refer to as the SNHD. Started in the fall of 2020. It was an epidemic. It involved dozens and dozens of people, as you will find out. Next, Shane. Now, this is promotional literature for Real Water. they claimed that their water was, quote, the best and the healthiest. They claim that your personal health, people who drank this water, and the health of your children depended upon drinking real water. This is what they claimed. Okay? You will come to understand that real water was very harmful. Very harmful. It was not healthy. So the first question again, what happened to all these people? Why were they going to medical emergency rooms? The first victims that were discovered were 5 babies. 2 7-month-old babies, they were twins actually, a 22-month-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. All 5 of these babies went to hospitals here in Clark County with acute liver failure. The hospitals in Clark County realized because of the serious condition, they had to send these babies immediately to a transplant center. They don't do liver transplants here in Las Vegas. You have to go out of state to get a liver transplant. So because of the condition of these 5 babies, they were sent up to Salt Lake. That arrow, there's the 5 babies in the bottom. That arrow is, they were sent by emergency jet, 5 different jet flights to Salt Lake. And the reason they went to Salt Lake is there's a children's hospital there that does liver transplants. It's called Primary Care Children's Hospital. One of the doctors is a hepatologist. That is the term for a doctor that studies and works on the liver. So the doctor up in Salt Lake was named Dr. Stephen Guthrie. He cared for maybe 3 or 4 of the children, but he treated them all. He was overall in charge. So when they were flown up there, he realized that something is going on here. Again, remember, only 2,000 cases a year, and suddenly from a medium-sized city like Las Vegas, you're getting 5 babies flown up for emergency liver transplants all at the same time. So Dr. Guthrie picked up the phone and he called the Southern Nevada Health District and he said, something is going on. We want you to start an investigation. They started an investigation. They found that all of these 5 babies were young, healthy. They'd never had liver problems before. So the health authorities interviewed the families, and they found that the babies had one thing in common, one thing alone. They all drank real water. All 5 of the families drank real water. So that helped the health authorities determine where they needed to start. So again, first question, what happened to these people? They had acute liver failure. 15 plaintiffs all had acute liver failure or serious liver injury. The babies all had it. And like I said before, dozens of other people had it. So what was causing the acute liver failure? So the Southern Nevada Health District did what's called an exposure assessment. They wanted to see what all the victims were exposed to. So they talked to them about everything in their houses, what kind of pesticide did you use, things of that nature. And again, they found everybody had one thing in common. They drank real water. So to determine whether or not this had been going on for a while, the public health authorities accessed all the computers in the hospitals in Clark County. They can do this from the health district office. They have their own computer that can go right into the hospital computers. They don't have to ask the hospitals to give them a thumb drive or do a search for them. They can do it themselves. And so what they did is they used a diagnostic code, which they wanted to see how many cases going back to 2016, how many people had had acute liver failure here in Clark County, and the doctors couldn't figure out the cause. Etiology is another word you'll see that means cause. So they went into all these computers, and they counted all the cases up, and this is what they found. Shane? This is a document or a chart that is from the morbidity and mortality weekly report. Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. You're going to hear to that referred to by the experts and the attorneys as the MMWR. Okay, this is a publication that the CDC does, and this is going to be an exhibit. You'll have it to look at if you want to. So this chart is intended to depict how many unknown liver cases, acute liver failure cases they had. So you will see that up in 2020, that's the spike. That's the first big spike. But that's not the only spike. Take a look at 2018. And as I'm going to tell you in a minute, a lot of the plaintiffs in this case got sick in 2018. But as you can see, there are a lot of acute liver failure cases of unknown origin that the health district found. So after getting the huge red flag about the 5 babies all drinking real water, after studying the diagnostic codes of all the hospitals, the Southern Nevada Health District realized they had a big problem. So they brought in the CDC. The CDC took part in the investigation, and they brought in the FDA. And the 3 of them got to the bottom of it, and I'm going to explain what they found in a second. But first, let me introduce you to the plaintiffs. So there's 15 different plaintiffs in this case. And this is a copy of what you have in the notebook. And so what we've done, we realize that 15 people, it's going to be hard to keep them all straight. And so what we've done is we put it on the notebook, everyone's picture, everybody's name. Okay. And the notebook, it's kind of like when you go to the Raiders game, you have a program, it tells you who the players are. This is the same idea. We're just trying to help you to understand who these people are. We're going to go into a lot of detail about the medical history of all of these 15 people. But for now, I'm just going to do 2 of them in detail. And as you're going to see a pattern here, okay? I'm going to start with Daisy Wheat. Daisy went to the emergency room at St. Rose Hospital on June 2nd, 2020. This is from that hospital record. Worsening confusion and dizziness. Remember I said when the liver's not working, the toxin goes to the brain and you have confusion? She's foggy in her mind. When she was in the emergency room, they found that she was in acute liver failure. Elevated ammonia level. Again, remember I told you the liver can't remove the ammonia, it's got to go somewhere? Daisy had all these symptoms. So she was hospitalized for 2 days there. And when she was hospitalized, they did a test on the liver, a blood test, and it's called a liver function test. They want to see how well the liver functions or doesn't function. And the 2 liver function tests that we're going to be talking about a lot are referred to as ALT and AST. That's an abbreviation. The name is, the real words are real long and they're medical. You really don't need to know those. But ALT, this is what they measured for Daisy, 665, 2714. Okay, so let me show you what a normal liver function test is. It's a blood test, and what they're trying to do is get a feeling for the extent of liver damage someone has. Next. These are the 2 most common. Next. And so normal, 12 to 78 for the ALT, so a high of 78 is normal. AST, a high of only 27 is normal. This is a normal reading. If you don't have any problems with your liver, you go in and you have the blood test, that's what you will have. Patients that have acute liver failure usually have really high ALT or AST results. And the reason again for that is the liver stops working. Okay, back to Daisy. She went back to the hospital and had another set of liver function tests. This would have been June 3rd, 2020. They found out she was getting worse. The ALT now is 1249, the AST's 2228. Her ammonia level is 126, which is extremely high. Okay? She's getting worse. And then they measured something. Remember I talked about the liver making enzymes that help the blood clot. Okay? When the liver doesn't make the enzymes that help the blood clot, you have a problem with blood clotting. You see the term there, excuse me, the term there, INR? INR means International Normalized Ratio. International Normalized Ratio. And what that means is they have the time it takes for everyone's blood to clot. It's a worldwide standard. And then they compare that to the patient at hand. So they take the normal INR and they compare it to the patient at hand, and they see if you're greater than normal. She had a 9.99. What does that mean? Shane? The normal INR is 0.86 to 1.14. Okay? 1 is the mean of that. So normal person that's not having a blood clotting problem, 0.86 to 1.4. If you get above 4.9, that's life-threatening. If you get cut, you have a greater risk of bleeding. You can even bleed out. Okay? So this is a serious, serious condition. So she has the elevated AST, the elevated ALT, and she has this extremely high 9.99 INR. And so they diagnosed her at the hospital. Shane, can I have that? Acute liver failure, hepatic, that just means liver. So when you see the word hepatic or hepatitis, that's usually liver. So she has hepatic encephalopathy, brain confusion caused by problems with the liver, drug-induced liver injury. DILI, you'll probably hear that term a little bit. So the hospital immediately thought that there was some toxin or drug was causing this. And then she had jaundice. That means her face was yellow. When your liver doesn't work, jaundice is a very common symptom. Okay, so she stayed at St. Rose for 2 days, and the doctors decided that there was nothing, the doctors in Las Vegas decided there was nothing they could do to help her. So what did they do? Like the 5 babies, they sent her to a liver transplant center. Okay, remember I said there's no liver transplant center here in Nevada? So they sent her to Loma Linda, which is up near Stanford Medical School. There's the transplant. So they were considering doing a liver transplant on her. And what that means, and I think Mr. Parker's going to explain this quite a bit when he talks about Mr. Henry, because Mr. Henry actually had a liver transplant. They take your liver out and they give you the liver of a stranger. That's a liver transplant. Okay, so they were considering doing that to Daisy, and that's why they flew her up to Loma Linda. And I'm just going to go briefly about a transplant operation. Again, Mr. Parker's going to get into this in more detail. This is the only treatment option. If someone has acute liver failure and it doesn't resolve in a day or two, this is the only thing they can do, a liver transplant. So, you know, there's only a small number of people to do it. They use a highly trained surgery team. Usually there's 20 to 25 people in the room when they're doing a liver transplant, because and an operation usually takes between 6 and 12 hours. It is a very difficult operation. Next, Shane. And after the operation, you have to take immunosuppressive drugs. Okay, what does that mean? You have the liver of a stranger now. Okay, your body is trying to reject it. It's going to try to reject it for the entire time period, the rest of your life. So to keep the body from rejecting your liver, they have to give you immunosuppressive drugs. And Mr. Parker is going to tell you about 2 of them that Mr. Henry has to take every day for the rest of his life. But back to that one, Shane. I think we had one more. And if you have a liver transplant, you have a 58% chance of living 15 years. Okay. This is what they told Daisy she may have to have. That's why they flew her to the transplant center. Next, Shane. So they had a discussion. Again, this is back at St. Rose before she was jetted to, and they always send the patients by emergency jet. You know, they can't just buy a ticket on Southwest because this is a serious medical emergency. All 5 of the children flew by emergency jet to Salt Lake. Daisy was flown by emergency jet to Loma Linda. 2 of the other plaintiffs that I'm going to talk about also had emergency jet rides. So they sent her to there, and she started getting better, so they discharged her. She went home, started drinking real water again. What happened? She's back in the emergency room 4 days after being discharged from Loma Linda. June 12th, 2020, they sent her home. She went to the emergency room again on June 18th. They sent her home. She went to the emergency room for the 4th time on September 26th. They sent her home. She went to the emergency room for a 5th time on October 1st. They sent her home. And then she was back in the hospital on October 3rd. And then they finally did what's called a liver biopsy. Okay. And this is intent. That's the liver. So what they do when they do a liver biopsy is they stick a needle. I'm going to get some more detail into you. They stick a needle and they take a piece of the liver out, and then the pathologists look at the liver and they try to determine what is the potential problem. That's what a liver biopsy is. So what did they find when they did Daisy's liver biopsy? They found something called two-tone hepatocytes. Okay. The important part of that is two-tone, 2 different shades on the liver slide. What does that mean? That means part of the liver injury might have been older, but the other part was brand new. It was caused within weeks or months by some sort of drug. And so that's why in the pathology report, they say this raises the possibility of drug-induced liver injury. So they kept her in the hospital for 3 days, and then they sent her home again. You know, you stay in the hospital, you're not drinking real water. You're drinking the good hospital water, all right? So that's why when these people went to the hospital, they started getting a little better. But anyway, she goes home and back to the emergency room for a 6th time on October 24th, 2020. Same problems, dizziness, nausea, forgetfulness, encephalopathy, all the same things again. ALTs, ASTs elevated again. And this time they admitted her. So this would have been 7 ER visits, and this is the 8th time she went back to St. Rose. And then they documented something that would prove to be very important. Shane? Did I miss one? Shane, back. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
I was talking about the biopsy. This is an actual tissue slide from Daisy. So what they do is they go in, they take the tissue out, and then they put it on a slide, and they put stains on it. And the reason they put stains on it is so they can see it better. They can see certain things better. So you see where it says trichrome on the top? This is what's called a trichrome stain. And so what they're trying to look for here is fibrosis or cirrhosis. Okay, what does that mean? When you have a regular liver, you do not have scarring inside your liver. Okay, Shane?
Do we need to replace your microphone? Or maybe we need to replace the batteries? Either or.
I think it's a battery problem. Or if you want the handheld, you can, it's up to you.
I think I'd rather have this one.
Let me try it. This is good? Good? Okay, let's try without the mic. So, back to the pathology slide. This is the actual slide from Daisy. And again, what they're trying to look for is fibrosis, scarring of the liver. That's why they do the trichrome.
We're going to have a pathologist testify, Real Water's going to have a pathologist testify, and they're both going to tell you that when you see this blue on this slide, that means scarring.
Blue is bad. Blue means your liver is damaged. Once you get the whole circle, that's called a cirrhotic nodule. Once you're at that stage, you have to get a liver transplant, like Mr. Henry did. But this is Daisy's slide from October 3rd, 2020. Thank you. Okay. All right. Is that better? Okay. Now, back to the slide sheet. And this is important. When you have a scar on your face, we can see it. When you have a scar in your liver, the liver is inside the body. You cannot see the liver. You can't see what's inside the liver. So to determine whether or not there's a scar there, you need something like this slide, okay? That is a scar on the liver. Dr. Datnow is our pathologist. He's going to testify about it. Dr. Hudson is our hepatologist. He's going to testify about it. And they're both going to tell you that this is a permanent injury. It doesn't get better. It doesn't go away. Okay? In fact, it gets worse. It progressively gets worse over the years. Now let's talk about another plaintiff, because there were other people that were sent to transplant centers. Lorenzo. Can I have the next one up, Shane? Here's Lorenzo. This is his hospital record. He was 24 years old in May 2018. Remember I told you there were going to be 4 cases in 2018? Remember that spike I showed you from 2018? He's one of the 4 cases. Okay, he goes to UMC, elevated ammonia greater than 200. Okay, remember Daisy's was about 124? Lorenzo's was off the charts, 200. So they immediately diagnosed the hepatic encephalopathy. Again, that's the brain confusion. Acute onset liver failure. He had acute liver failure, unknown etiology. They didn't know what the cause was. And so there's the diagnosis, acute liver failure, encephalopathy, and altered mental status. So that's just his ammonia level. You see the normal range, 72. He's got 203. Again, if the liver can't process the ammonia, it goes up into the brain and causes these problems. Next, Shane. So he was so confused. FM means family. Lorenzo was so confused that when he was in the hospital bed, he was calling out to people and seeing people that actually weren't there. Okay? This is what encephalopathy is. Take a look at his ALT, AST. ALT, 1280. And again, remember the upper range of normal was 78. AST, 1772. Again, the upper range of normal was 27 for AST. So extreme elevations, just like Daisy. I talked about the INR, International Normalized Ratio. He had 6.5. Again, normal is 0.86 to 1.14. A little bit on the side of one way or the other. That's normal. So he's got 6.5. Not getting enough clotting factor. Again, just like Daisy, he could have bled out. So they treated him. They tried to give him stuff to help the clotting, and they sent him to UCLA for liver transplant evaluation. Again, emergency jet flight. Here's a picture of him getting on the jet. I think we have another one, Shane. There he is. They're putting him on the jet. Next, Shane. Here he is in the hospital at the UCLA Transplant Center. Next, Shane. And this is the consent form that has to be signed when you're being evaluated for liver transplant. Again, a very dangerous operation. A lot of people die on the operating room table. So before they do it, they make you sign a consent form. Obviously, Lorenzo couldn't sign it. He had the encephalopathy. He was confused. He couldn't sign it. So it was signed by his mother to consent to a liver transplant. Again, he was in the hospital 5 days. No real water, just hospital water. Gets better. They decide they don't have to do a transplant. So the plaintiffs in this case, all 15, had two things in common. They drank real water, and they all got acute liver failure or serious liver injury. Two things in common. And I'm not going to go through, like I said, the medical records for all of them, but let me tell you a little bit about everybody. And when they come on the stand, we will go through the medical records with them. So let me tell you a little bit about the 15 people. Trevor Abley, he was born in Las Vegas, August 31st, 2006. He's the youngest plaintiff we have in this case. He's 18 now, just turned 18. He was hospitalized at Summerlin Hospital, ALT 2621, AST 2660. And again, the AST, which is probably the more important of these two liver function tests, 98 times normal, okay? So he was hospitalized in the hospital. They sent him home, bed rest for 3 months. 3 months. Next. He's a senior now at Faith Lutheran, plays hockey. In fact, a very good hockey player. Next gen. His team won the Nevada State Championship last year, playing hockey, and he hopes to get a college scholarship. Again, I'm just giving you an overview. We're probably going to have his mother on Friday to talk more about his condition and what he went through in the hospital. Next, Monica Branchinoto. She's probably going to testify tomorrow. She's born in Las Vegas, graduated from Chaparral, mother of 2 boys. She was in and out of the emergency room, just like Daisy. You know, they go to the emergency room, and I'm not faulting any doctor, because when you hear what I'm going to tell you, you will understand why the doctors could not figure this out. Okay, so I'm not faulting any doctor. But just like Daisy, she went in and out of the emergency room, and then she's hospitalized for 5 days, December 2020. Next shot. She has the INR of International Normalized Ratio. Again, that's the blood clot. Remember, 0.86 to 1.14 is normal. So she wasn't in as much danger as some of the others, but she had elevated too, 3.35 next. And she had a liver biopsy. They took the needle, you know, they stuck it in, they got a tissue sample from her. And Dr. Datnow, again, he's our pathologist. We're going to show you the liver biopsy slide when he comes, and we'll show you the problem she has. Next, Shane. This is Hunter Brown. I think you've seen Hunter sitting here. He's over there right now. Hunter was born at Sunrise Hospital on October 28, 1975. Okay. He graduated from Gorman. He's been in the clothing business. He was the manager. I don't know if you've ever been to Mandalay Place. They have the high-end sneaker store there. He was the manager of that for years. He was hospitalized at Dignity Health St. Rose from November 15th to November 17th. And let's take a look at his AST and ALT. So he's got AST 253, ALT 789. Again, as I told you before, normal's 27 to 78, so elevated. So what did they diagnose him with? Same thing everybody else had: encephalopathy, pneumonia, brain confusion, and acute hepatitis, which means liver problem. Next, please. This is Pam Brown. This is Hunter's mother. She's sitting over there. Kind of looks like Faye Dunaway in this picture, you know. But anyway, Pam moved to Las Vegas. I think that slide's wrong. She moved to Las Vegas in '68, and she has a master's degree from UNLV. So she's a longtime resident. She's Hunter's mother and the mother of 3 other boys. Okay. grandchildren, great-grandchildren that she'll probably talk about a little bit. So she went to the hospital November 12th, 2020. Same thing everybody else had, nausea, blurred vision, dizziness. They measured her ALT and AST, same problems, 890, 257. As I told you, it's going to fall into a pattern here, all right? There's a pattern. And then finally, she used to work as a teacher, and then she's a jewelry designer on top of that. But she'll testify probably beginning next week, I would think. Next plaintiff. Adair was born in Israel, and he moved to Las Vegas in his mid-20s. And he owned a business that designed LED signs. So he's hospitalized at Spring Valley from November 4th to November 9th, drinks the good hospital water, gets better, they let him out. Goes back to drinking more real water and back to the hospital. All right? Common pattern. Let's see his next, okay. ALT 1823, AST 1823, AST 67 times normal. INR 8. That's one of the higher ones. Remember, Daisy had 9.99. 8 is probably the second highest one of all the plaintiffs. Again, you could bleed out. Next gen. Same thing as everybody else, acute liver failure, altered mental state, encephalopathy, same thing. Next. He's died. This plaintiff has died. We are not claiming that his death was caused by real water, okay? I just want to make sure that everyone understands that, okay? So he's not going to be able to testify. We're going to have some other people testify about him. All right, next thing. This is his INR again. Like I said, it was 8. Next. Okay, Vincent, go ahead. He looks like he came from Chicago. Anyway, he came from Chicago about 20 years ago, moved to Las Vegas, and he works for D.R. Horton in the home warranty section. Next thing. Same thing, hospitalized. Different hospital this time, Centennial. November 19th, November 23rd. He had elevated ASTs, 361, ALTs, 333. Diagnosed with multiple liver-related injuries. Next one. Now, I know Mr. Maynard looks mean, okay? He looks a little mean, threatening there. Gray is a UFC fighter. He fights for the UFC, okay? So we use this picture kind of just, we have nicer pictures of him, but you're going to remember him as the UFC fighter. So he moved to Las Vegas in 6th grade, went to Bonanza and Durango, and then he moved to Ohio. Next thing. Before he went to Ohio, he was Nevada State wrestling champion, and then he attended Michigan State, and he was 3-time All-American in wrestling. So he became a UFC fighter. And we've actually got videos of the 2 UFC fights, one before he drank real water and one after, and you're going to be able to see the difference. And he lost his UFC contract because of his performance in the second fight we're going to show you about. Anyway, he is one of the people in 2018. Remember I told you there were 4 of them? So he's hospitalized in Mountain View. 21 days of dizziness, slurred speech, fatigue, vomiting. He's in the hospital here in Las Vegas, drinking the good hospital water, gets better, they discharge him. He moves to Michigan, and then he comes back to Las Vegas in February 2021, and he's visiting his mother. And when he's visiting his mother, he sees in the garage that they have some old bottles of real water. So he starts drinking the real water again, and what happens? Boom! Right back in the hospital. Right back in the hospital. Next one. Okay, his ALT 553, AST 1579, 58 times normal. And I told you he looks mean, but he's not really a mean guy. In fact, his nickname's the Bully, which doesn't sound good, but the reason his nickname is the Bully is because he saved a bull terrier in college, and he loves bull terriers. So that is Mr. Maynard. Next, Shane. This is Carla Moreno. Carla moved to Las Vegas when she's 16, graduated from Coronado, has 3 associate's degrees. She's hospitalized in Spring Valley for 7 or 8 days, from the 13th to the 20th. And before she went in there, she had a month of nausea, vomiting, dizziness, fatigue, all the classic symptoms from acute liver failure. She also had a liver biopsy. Again, her ALT, 603, AST, pretty high, 2273. She had a liver biopsy, and Dr. Datnow, the pathologist, will be here to talk about the results of that biopsy. Okay. Sherry. So Sherry Rasmussen was born in Chicago. She moved to Las Vegas with her parents when she was 17 years old. And she's an athlete, not UFC. She started her career as an amateur gymnast, and then she became a professional figure skater until about 2001. And then she hung up the skates. She started being a teacher in Clark County School District. So, same thing. She's going in and out of the emergency rooms in October, November 2020. Remember, this isn't a good time to go to the hospital because we're still at the tail end of COVID. Okay, this is not a great time to be going in and out of the hospital, if there is a great time. So anyway, she's going in and out of the hospitals, and she's hospitalized at Valley Hospital from November 19th through November 21st. Same symptoms. She had hematemesis, which means she was throwing up blood. I mean, not a good thing. Nausea, vomiting, dizziness, weakness, fatigue, all the classic symptoms. Next one. I think Shane's doing that to prompt me, huh? So we don't have an ALT or AST for Sherry because she was treated at Henderson Hospital, and I do not understand why, but Henderson Hospital typically does not do ALT, AST tests. I don't know why, but so we don't have a figure for her, but she can talk about her symptomology. Okay, this is Daniel Taylor. He's sitting back there. He's an auto mechanic. He was hospitalized. He's one of the 2018 cases, May 18th, 2018 to May 24th, 2018. His ALT is 1753, AST is 3,034, 113 times normal. He had INR, again, that's the clotting measurement, 8.08, and that's the second highest one. Daisy had the 9.99, Attar had the 8, so he has 8.08. And interesting, Mr. Henry, as Mr. Parker is going to tell you, had to have a liver transplant. His INR was in the 5s, just in the 5s, and they gave him a liver transplant. 3 of these plaintiffs had INRs higher than the guy who had the liver transplant. So same diagnosis, acute liver failure, encephalopathy. And again, this is just the INR again. Next, Jim. Mr. Watkins, he's back there. Well, he was. Okay, there he is. Yeah, he's behind the camera there. So Steve was born and raised in Las Vegas. He graduated from Valley High School in '81. Same pattern, emergency room, emergency room, emergency room, and then finally he's hospitalized. He's one of the 2018 cases. So he's in the hospital for almost a week, May 29 to May 24. Same diagnosis, acute liver failure, encephalopathy. And like I said, there's 4 plaintiffs in the case that got sick. In May 2018, Steve, Daniel Taylor, Gray Maynard, remember Maynard is the UFC fighter, and Lorenzo. Okay, next. So, interesting. After he got out of the hospital, his wife sent an email to Real Water, and we're going to show you that email. Okay, we're going to show you that email. Telling Real Water, and he was a home delivery person. He had the water sent, delivered to his home, so they know who he was. They brought the water. But anyway, he sends them an email and tells them that The doctor thought his problems were caused by alkaline water, the real water. Send them email. So what happened? Absolutely nothing. No investigation by Real Water whatsoever. Didn't call Steve, didn't call his wife, didn't email him back asking about his medical condition, no flowers to the hospital, nothing. Okay? And this was in 2018. 2018. Okay, let's go to the next plaintiff. And I think this is the last other than Mr. Henry. Brandy Wren. So Brandy graduated from Valley High School. She's worked all her life as a bartender. So she was hospitalized at Henderson Hospital from November 3rd to November 9, 2020, 6 or 7 days. Her AST, 7,214, 267 times normal. Next-gen INR of 8, one of the higher ones. Again, normal is around 1. Same diagnosis, acute liver failure, encephalopathy, altered mental state. So she also had a liver biopsy. They stuck the needle in, they took a piece of her liver, and Dr. Dat now is going to show it to you and explain that it shows something called bridging fibrosis. Okay, what does that mean? That just means the scar. The scar is going throughout the liver. And he's going to show you pictures of it, and he's going to explain why that's a serious and permanent injury. And Dr. Hudson will also talk about that. So that's 14 plaintiffs. Mr. Parker's going to talk about the 15th, Mr. Henry. And Judge, I don't know if you want me to break here, or you want...
Probably, what do you think? Good time to break. Yeah. Good transition.
Okay.
Okay, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what we're going to do right now, we're going to take our lunch recess. And remember, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report or other commentary on the trial by any persons connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio, social media. We talked about that. There's strict prohibition. Lastly, do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with the trial until the cause is finally submitted to you. Also remember, and I always try to bring this up at least once a day, regarding inadvertent contact with the lawyers or the parties or members of the lawyers, plaintiff's team and or defense team. You can't talk to them, you understand that? And you promise me that if you do it inadvertently, and they don't respond, you won't hold that against them, right? Everybody agree? All right. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and break until 1:30, and we'll take our lunch break, and be ready to go then.
All rise for the jury.
All right. Anything else to address? All right, enjoy your lunch.
You may be seated.
All right, I want to say good afternoon to everyone. Let's go ahead and set forth our appearances for the record.
Your Honor, Will Kemp, Teddy Parker, Eric Bettman, and Jazz Switzer.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Joe Ledoux and Eric Freeman on behalf of the Real Water Defendants.
All right. Is there anything we need to address outside the presence?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. We can bring him in. and continue on.
All rise for the jury. All jurors are present, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am.
You may be seated.
All right, do the parties stipulate to the presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I hope you enjoyed your lunch. All right, and it's my understanding we're going to continue with opening statements. Is that correct, Mr. Kemp?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's turn to the story about how the public health authorities figured out that real water was the cause of dozens of acute liver failure cases in Clark County. Okay, next. This is a slide that the Southern Nevada Health District and the CDC prepared for a presentation that they gave in December of 2021. And this lists all the possible causes of acute liver failure. All the possibilities are here. And if you take a look in the second column and you go down, you see something called hydrazine. 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 Now, in Greek mythology, the Hydra was a 9-headed monster. And when you cut off one head, another head grew back. And it lived in the murky waters of a swamp near Greece. Hercules ultimately defeated the Hydra by cutting off all of its heads. Now, hydrazine is not a monster, but it can have monstrous consequences if it's consumed or inhaled even. And it's called hydrazine because it has 2 nitrogen atoms in it. What is hydrazine used for? Hydrazine is primarily a rocket fuel. If you've ever watched a rocket being launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida by NASA, they used hydrazine. Hydrazine was used to power the Apollo rocket that went to the moon in 1969. And at present, hydrazine is used by Elon Musk and his SpaceX company. They use a blend of hydrazine to power their rockets that take satellites up. So hydrazine is primarily a rocket fuel. And to emphasize how toxic it is, look at those people. They're wearing hazmat suits because they don't want to breathe hydrazine. They don't want to touch hydrazine. Okay. Now, hydrazine is highly toxic. And it's undisputed that when you inhale it or you swallow a small amount, it causes acute liver failure. The U.S. government, primarily because it was a rocket fuel, did extensive testing on hydrazine in the 60s and into the 70s. They fed it to dogs. They saw the reaction on the dogs' livers. They autopsied the dogs and studied the livers. They fed it to monkeys. They fed it to mice. So hydrazine is very well studied. Now, we're going to have an expert witness come in who's a toxicologist, and he's going to discuss some of the toxicology studies. And what a toxicology study is they give a toxin, in this case hydrazine, to animals, and then they study it. So Dr. Kosnitz, our toxicologist, he's from Colorado, and he's a scientist that studies the reactions of toxins to the human body. Next slide. Board certified. He'll explain what that means. He's going to talk about the scientific literature. Remember I told you it was studied a lot. You know, there's 5 or 6 pretty famous articles about hydrazine next. And he's going to testify that hydrazine causes acute liver failure if it's consumed by human beings. And that's not disputed. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why, in this case, that involves these 15 people who got acute liver failure, the 5 babies, dozens of others that got acute liver failure, why am I talking about a rocket fuel? The reason is simple. Real water had hydrazine in it. Real water contained this rocket fuel. And that was the toxin that was in this bottled water that caused the acute liver failure. So in the United States, we have several government agencies that do investigations relating to health, and I've mentioned them. We have the CDC, the FDA, and the Southern Nevada Health District. So as I said before, the CDC came in and helped with the investigation. They actually went to the real water plant and they took samples from a bottle of what's called concentrate. And I can explain in a minute what concentrate, how they made it, what it is. But they took samples from the real water plant and they tested these samples to see what was in this stuff. And we have the test results, and I'm going to get into them in a minute, but first I'm going to explain how they did the test. They used what was called a GCMS machine. That means gas chromatograph mass spectrometry. That's a picture of one of them. This is a very common machine that food and beverage makers use and other people to test products. They want to know exactly what is in it. So what happened is the FDA came in, they took the samples of the concentrate, they sent them back to the FDA lab in Cincinnati. They ran them through this GCMS machine, and they found out that the real water had hydrazine in it. Important finding. Go ahead, Shane. This is all about the GCMS machine. We're going to be talking about it during the case. This is a document that's in your jury notebook. This is tab number 2. And the reason we put it in there is we don't want to have any dispute in anyone's mind that this water had the rocket fuel in it. If you can see what the FDA found, the concentration of hydrazine was determined to be 1.44, 1.75, next one, Shane, 1.33. Dr. Kosnet, the toxicologist, is going to explain what that means. Okay, that is a very, very dangerous level of hydrazine, of the rocket fuel. That's in your brochure. They tested 3 different samples of concentrate. In all 3 samples, they found the hydrazine. In addition to that, there was testing done on retail bottles. Again, I told you this is one of the retail bottles that they made. They took the retail bottles, and this was done by a different laboratory called Eurofins. Shane, do you have that for me? Eurofins found hydrazine in, I think, 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8 of the retail bottles. Again, a very high level. That's 300. Dr. Kosnet's going to explain to you what that means. These are all the samples of real water they tested. Hydrazine, hydrazine, hydrazine. So there's no dispute that hydrazine was in the real water. Every single expert that testifies in this case is going to tell you that rocket fuel, hydrazine, should never be in bottled water. No dispute about that. Okay? When we get to the manufacturing process in a second, I'm going to explain how real water used a very unique, very different manufacturing process, and that's how they wound up with hydrazine in their water. Now, let me answer one important question. Why did it take years and years of people getting acute liver failure? Why did it take the FDA to do testing in 2021 to find that there was hydrazine in this water? The answer is simple. Real water did not test the product before it put it out on the market. They didn't perform GCMS, gas chromatograph. They didn't do that when they first brought the product to the market. Even after they got customer complaints, other people here in the valley, this was a 2014 complaint that we're going to show you. The customer complained that he bought real water, I think at a Terrible Herbs, and that the real water had a, quote, this is from the complaint, gasoline-like substance in the water. Didn't test the product after that. Instead of doing a comprehensive test, because a GCMS looks through the whole spectrum. It doesn't just look for one toxin, it looks for this one, this one, this one. So it is a broad test. So instead of doing a broad test, what Real Water did was bacteria tests. All they were testing for was bacteria. And that's why they didn't know what was in the product. So we've got the answer to our question. Hydrazine, the rocket fuel in the Real Water, is what caused the liver injuries suffered by the 15 plaintiffs. And that's not going to be a disputed fact. There's not going to be any argument for that. Okay, next sheet. So what happened to these people? Doctors found they all had acute liver failure or serious liver injury. They drank Real Water. The FDA found the hydrazine, the rocket fuel, in the concentrate, and the other lab, Eurofins, found it in the retail bottles. Next. Hydrazine, we know from the government studies, causes acute liver failure. And Real Water caused the acute liver failure suffered by all of these plaintiffs, by the 5 babies, by the dozens of other people here in Clark County. Now, even though there's not a dispute that hydrazine caused it, we're going to have Dr. Hudson testify. He, again, is the board-certified hepatologist, liver specialist. He's going to tell you about he's done hundreds, if not thousands, of liver transplants, and he's going to say that the hydrazine in the Real Water caused the plaintiff's injury. And then he's going to talk about the injuries that are involved with acute liver failure. I started it a little bit, the scarring. I'm going to get into that in a little more detail. So what happened to these people? They had acute liver failure. They drank Real Water. FDA found hydrazine in the water. Hydrazine, the rocket fuel, causes acute liver failure. And each one of these people have a serious liver injury. So in this case, Real Water is admitting that they are responsible for compensatory damages. Mr. Parker talked to you about that. So the only issue on compensatory damages is the appropriate amount for each one of the 15 plaintiffs. Okay? That's the only issue for compensatory damages. After that issue is resolved, excuse me, we tried this over lunch. I think he's got a button there or something. But the issue after the amount is determined is punitive damages. Mr. Parker talked about that. Again, punitive damages are damages that are used to send a message to other food and beverage manufacturers that this should never happen again. That's what punitive damages are. And on the verdict form, you're going to have a little box that's going to say punitive damages, yes or no. Binary choice, yes or no. Okay? We think there's 5 reasons you should check yes. And before getting into it, let me talk a little bit about how they actually made this product so you understand why we think these 5 things they did or didn't do were wrong. Okay, that's the 5-gallon jug. That's the retail bottle. And basically there was a 4-part process to make this water. Shane? 1, they took purified water. So they took water that came from Lake Mead and they ran it through a purifier and they got purified water. Nothing in it. No chemicals, no minerals, pure water. Okay, so they purified it, and then the first step, they electrolyzed it. They juiced it. And I'm going to show you how they did that in a second. And why did they juice it? Because they wanted to make alkaline water. So alkaline, acidic. Alkaline, negative charge. Acidic, positive charge. So they applied the electricity, and then I'm going to go through this chart in a second, and they separated it into two different types, acidic and then alkaline, and then they juiced it again a second time. And when I say juiced it, they ran it through these. These are titanium tubes. They hung the titanium tubes on a rack. They hooked the titanium tubes up to what I'm going to call now for a battery charger. I'll just call it a battery charger. It was a lot more than that, but let's just call it a battery charger. And by the way, there's a picture of that in your book in tab, it's either tab 1 or 2. Is it 1? Okay, there it is. That's the actual charger that they used to charge these tubes. Okay, so they hook up positive to one, negative to the other, and again, they're trying to separate alkaline from acidic. That's what they're doing. And this was not a quick process. It took 6 to 8 hours through these tubes for one run. Then they did the second run, the second electrolysis process through the tube. And again, that was 6 or 8 hours. And after all that was done, they had concentrate. That's how they made the concentrate. So they would juice it, make the concentrate. Then they would take the concentrate and they would mix that with more purified water. Now you're going to hear testimony about the secret room, the hidden room, the no-no room, you're not supposed to go in there. That was the concentrate room. That's where they made the concentrate. Okay? That was, only people that had access to it were either the inventor, who's going to testify to you, his name's Mr. Marlowe, or Blaine Jones. That was the person that made the concentrate. Those are the only two people that could go in the concentrate room. So after they made the concentrate, in process 1 and 2, they take the concentrate, they mix it with purified water, they measure it a little bit to make sure it's where they want it, and then they put it into the bottles and sell it. So juice it, mix it, test it, boom, we have real water. Okay? Now, this chart, it looks complicated, but it's really pretty simple. I know the first time I saw it, I thought, what the heck? But anyway, this chart was prepared by one of our expert witnesses, Dr. Najim. And Dr. Najim is going to explain it to you. That's a picture of Dr. Najim. I think he'll probably be testifying Monday. I think he's on Monday. So step 1 is when they're juicing it here. And remember I told you they were separating from alkaline into acidic. So they start with 300 and they have 150 left because the acidic they just pour out, dump it into the sewer. They want the alkaline, so they just get rid of the acidic. They do it again, another 150 gallons, throw away half of it after it goes through the tubes for 8 hours. So now they have 75 gallons left. And then they put it in here, that's the concentrate bottle. He's going to explain all this to you. And he's going to explain how this process created the rocket fuel. How during this process here and here, they made rocket fuel that wound its way into the concentrate. Every single bottle of real water that these plaintiffs drank that was sold in Clark County, every single one was made with the concentrate. And like I've already said, the FDA tested the concentrate 3 different times, found hydrazine in it every time. So every single bottle of real water sold in Clark County had this hydrazine in it because hydrazine was in the concentrate and concentrate was used to make the water. Okay, I think we've explained the titanium tubes. Do we have a bullet point on Dr. Najim? Okay, so Dr. Najim, doctorate degree in environmental engineering. Next. He wrote the 2 leading papers in the world on hydrazine, okay? On hydrazine with regards to how it's formed when in the water process. He's not a toxicologist, so it's a different angle here. He's going to explain this 4-part process using his chart, and he's going to explain how during these first 2 steps hydrazine was formed. Next. And even though the FDA found it in every single concentrate sample that they tested, it was found in 7 out of the 8 retail bottles, he's going to tell you that when it was manufactured, it probably had about 10 times as much rocket fuel in it as when the plaintiffs consumed it, because hydrazine degrades. It's not stable. All right, next Shane. Okay, those are the titanium tubes. Those, I showed those to you already. That is the rack holder. So they just used gravity to bring the water through the tubes. They poured it in on top, put the tubes vertically like this, and then it dripped through while they were charging it with the battery charger. Next, Shane. And again, here's the battery charger. Again, it's in your book. And I call it a battery charger. It's really a little more than that. Okay? They had a certain setting that they use. Those are the jumper cables that they use to attach to the tubes here, positive, negative. Okay, next Shane. So, why do we think you should check yes? Check the yes box for punitive damages. 5 reasons. Number 1, and I've talked about this a little bit, they didn't do any testing. They brought this product onto the market using what I think is a pretty bizarre manufacturing process. Okay, you juice it for 8 hours, then you juice it again for 8 hours, and then you know, and despite having red flags like the gasoline complaint, they didn't do any general non-targeted screening tests. And what we mean by that is they didn't know what was in the product because they didn't look. Okay, next Shane, that's point 1. Point 2, they didn't have good quality assurance. And some of you in your jobs probably have quality control directors or quality assurance directors, but that's to make sure that the product is made appropriately. They had basically non-existent quality assurance. That's the second point. Third, they knew of these customer complaints. They didn't investigate them. And there wasn't just the one gasoline-like substance complaint. There were dozens of complaints. We actually tracked down 3 of the people. One's named Lois Kessler, the other one's named Susan Dorn, and the other one's named Trey Fisher. So we tracked them down, and they're going to tell you about their complaints that they made to Real Water. And I've already pointed out how Mr. Watson's wife in 2018 sent them an email saying he was in the hospital. Okay, so they knew of all of these complaints, and they didn't diligently investigate or review the manufacturing process. Next, Shane. This one, I think, is one of the worst. They knew people were getting sick. They had complaint after complaint of people in late September 2020, early October 2020, that people were getting sick. The vice president of sales, he was the vice president of sales, then he became an independent contractor for him. He went into the front office and he talked to Blaine Jones. Again, this is the person that makes the concentrate. Told Blaine, people are getting sick. I personally know 2 people are getting sick. We have had a flood of complaints of people who are getting sick. You have got to do a product recall. We're going to bring Mr. Randolph. That's exactly what he's going to tell you. Okay? Blaine Jones says, no, not going to do a recall. Mr. Randolph, a couple days later, another relative of his got sick from drinking Real Water. Acute liver failure. Went back in to see Blaine Jones and said, Blaine, you have got to do a recall. It's got to be the water. No recall. That's the 4th point. 5th, the FDA went out to the Real Water plant when they were taking these samples. They also did an inspection in around March 2021, and they found 5 critical problems out there that I'm going to show you in a second. But we think for any one of these 5 reasons, they should be responsible for punitive damages. You should check yes. So let's go through them a little bit, Shane. This I've talked about quite a bit. They failed to test the product before they started selling it. They failed to test the product, except for these bacteria tests. They failed to do anything. We are going to call the inventor. His name is John Marlowe. You know, he invented this crazy process where you juice, you know. He invented it. He's going to tell you where he got the titanium tubes, and he's going to admit that he didn't test it. He didn't do any testing. He, the inventor, didn't know what was in the product. But he's going to come in and talk to you. And this was a bizarre manufacturing process. Think about it for a minute. Applying electricity to 2 8-hour runs. This is how Frankenstein made his monster, okay? Just applied electricity. Look at this. Look, this is how they actually made the product. And Dr. Najam will explain that this is why there's rocket fuel, hydrazine in it. Okay, next. These are, again, on the testing. How much would it have cost to know what is in your product? Shane? This is the GCM test, $200 to $1,000. At the beginning of the process, they could have spent $200 to $1,000 and known what was in their product by doing the same test that the FDA did. Okay? They didn't do it. They didn't do it before they started selling. They didn't do it when they had customer complaints. They didn't do it at any time. Next. And Mr. Marlowe, the inventor, he's going to say that they should have done it. He invented the product. He licensed it to them. He's going to say they should have done general testing. And if they had done the same thing the FDA did, paid the $200, do the GCMS test, they would have known about this from the outset. Next, Jane. Okay, quality assurance. We're bringing probably, if she's not the #1 quality assurance expert in the nation, she's in the top 3. But we're bringing this woman, Dr. Hutt. She's a quality assurance expert. She used to work for the federal government. She helped develop the standards that they use for food safety, for food and beverage products. Okay? She's worked for all the big companies, McDonald's, Yummy Brand, Coors Brewing. She's been the quality assurance director or done special projects for all of them. So she studied the real water manufacturing process, and she tried to analyze, are these people doing anything for quality assurance? What are they doing? Next, Shane. And she found that there was a complete lack of quality assurance. And one thing we're going to talk about, they had a receptionist. The receptionist is named Patty Converse. I'm going to show you a picture of her in a second. She was the receptionist there for 6 weeks. Had no training whatsoever on quality assurance, no training on food and beverage manufacturing. She was the receptionist for 6 weeks, and then they promoted her to be the director of quality assurance. And so Dr. Hutt is going to tell you, and Patty Converse, whether she's live or by video, I'm not sure, but she's going to admit herself that she wasn't qualified to be the quality assurance director. And Dr. Hutt's going to confirm that. Also, they got a written warning in 2018. Now, I'm not talking about Mr. Watkins' wife's email. I'm talking about something else. They had an inspector come in and go through the facility for 8 hours, did a big inspection report, and it's called the NSF report. NSF is the name of the company. This is all they do. They run around, they inspect people. So the date of the inspection, December 6, 2018. And first part about the report is the HACCP section. Shane? And HACCP, I can explain a little bit. That's a quality assurance program that NASA developed. And so look at these scores. Question number 1 is the HACCP team. You know, the people who are responsible for safety. Do they know who they are? No. Has the person responsible, the receptionist, completed the formal HACCP training? No. You know, is there a description of each product? No. They flunked, okay? They flunked. Look at this score. 10 out of 150. 6.7%. That's what the inspector found. And that's bad enough. But there was another finding that I think you will agree is stunning. Shane? They found, remember, this is a bottled water plant. They're making bottled water. that was sold throughout Clark County, sold nationwide at places like Whole Foods, Costco, Albertsons, a lot of different places. They found that at this plant, quote, there was no qualified individual to provide a level of competency necessary for production of clean and safe product. They didn't have anyone in the whole facility that knew what they were doing. And the inspector told them this. The bottom line, and Dr. Hutt will explain this to you in a lot of detail, is that they had no quality assurance, or at best, very poor quality assurance. Now, let's talk about the prior incidents a little bit. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you're going to hear from a lot of these people yourself. So these are the common signs. We went over these with each one of the 15 plaintiffs of acute liver failure, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, weight, vision loss. These are the common signs. Okay, so what were the customers complaining of? Next, Shane. First of all, they didn't document these. When a customer complained, do you know what they were told to do? Were they told to investigate? Were they told to, get some medical records? Were they told to interview? No. They were told, send them some free water. That was it. They were told, send these people who complain free water. And this wasn't just a 1 day, 1 week, 1 month thing. This went on for the entire time period. That was the instruction. And we're going to bring Patty Converse. Again, she's the receptionist that says, that was promoted to be quality control director after 6 weeks. And we're going to bring Mr. Desitel, who they identified as the quality assurance director after Mrs. Converse. But they're saying maybe he wasn't really. They had cards with him being the quality assurance director. Neither one of those people were told about the customer complaints. Now think about that for a minute. The people that are supposed to be in charge of quality assurance are not told about the customer complaints because they go to the sales staff. And the sales staff just sends them free water. Next, Shane. Go ahead. Okay, this is a complaint chart we're going to show you. Mr. Marlowe, he tested the product on himself and got sick. Again, that's the inventor, the older guy. Look at all these complaints, 13, 14. And look at some of these complaints. Oily substance, oily substance, oily substance, strong chemical smell, gasoline-like substance, cloudy substance. After getting these complaints, they didn't do any sort of GCMS test. They didn't do anything, okay? And so, and I told you we're going to see Mr. Fisher's name there, second from the bottom. He's going to testify by video, talk about his complaint. Kessler and Dorn, they're going to testify by video, talk about their complaint. Mr. Watkins is here. He's going to tell you about the email that he sent to them, okay? And then four of them, I think, are particularly troubling, okay? And these are going to be exhibits in the case. So that's the exhibit number 17. Next, Shane. Yeah, put them all up. So oily red substance, strong chemical smell, gasoline-like substance. Gee, I wonder what that was. I wonder what that was when we know that hydrazine was in every single bottle. Okay. Cloudy substance in the water. They had all these complaints, didn't do anything. Okay. Now, we're going to call 3 different real water people to testify. Okay, the first one, I've told you, is Patty Converse. She was the receptionist. 6 weeks later, boom, quality control director. Nice woman. I'm not saying she's not a nice woman. She's probably a great receptionist, but they never should have promoted her to quality control director. And she was quality control director for 27 months. It wasn't like she was just there for a week or a month or even 6 months. 27 months, 2.5 years almost. Next, Shade. No experience, no training, nothing. Next. And she's going to admit it. She will I asked her, point blank, she is going to admit that she wasn't qualified. And Dr. Hutt's going to explain the qualifications you should have if you're a quality assurance director. She didn't have any of them. Okay, and this is what I already told you. When they got a complaint, what were they supposed to do? Send people free water. Okay, that was the protocol. Next, Shane. So this is the second real water employee who's going to testify, Mr. Desitel. He's a former drill sergeant. He was actually a drill sergeant. So I'm real careful when I ask him questions. But anyway, so he was a vet hired by Real Water in 2017. Next. So they gave him cards saying he was the quality control director. They called him the quality control director, but he thought he was involved in production. Next. Not told about any of these prior complaints, not told about any of them. Next. And he said if he'd known about these prior complaints, he would have shut the line down and done an investigation. Next, Shane. So Converse, like I said, she didn't see the complaints. Next. Told people to give out free water. Next. This is Mr. Watkins' complaint. A week at Desert Inn Hospital, and they didn't even call him back. Didn't tell the production manager about it. Next. And the Real Water owner gave an instruction that you're going to hear about to all the employees. Don't stop production for any reason. Don't stop pumping out the water for any reason. That was the instruction they were given. Next. So this is Dr. Hutt again. Dr. Hutt, the Quality Assurance Director. Non-targeted screening. I mean, this is commonly done. You shouldn't be selling a product without knowing what's in it. Next. They didn't do it. Next. Should have done it either at the beginning or when they got the complaints. Next. And if they had done it, they would have found what the FDA found. They would have found the hydrazine. Okay. Next, Shane. So they had all these problems in late September, early October of 2020, and they knew about it. And the third Real Water employee who was going to testify is Blaine Jones. That's him right there. He was the vice president for Real Water. Shane? So he's the son of the owner. He was in charge of the overall production for almost a decade. He was the one that made the concentrate that had the rocket fuel in it. Remember I told you it was a secret room? He was the one that went into the secret room. Okay? He got acute liver failure himself on October 5th, 2020 from drinking Real Water. He got it. Okay? The guy making it got acute liver failure. Next sheet.
So anyway, they check you into the hospital, right? Yep. And you say, I was diagnosed as critical and rushed into the ICU. That would be the intensive care unit. Yep. So they checked you into intensive care. Yep.
Okay, this was on October 5th, 2020 that he got sick. Okay? And that's the same time they started getting all these complaints. This is a statement or an answer that they gave to the FDA. Can we make that a little bigger, Shane? Okay. During the period of October 15th through November 15th, 2020, during this month period, the production manager, Anthony Brown, that's different than Anthony Randolph. There's Anthony Brown and Anthony Randolph. Remember Anthony Randolph's the one that begged him to do the recall. So they had so many complaints that they assigned this person to respond to the complaints. And look at this. Through this month-long period, they got about 25, 30 calls. People canceled their home delivery, odd tasting water. Did they do a recall? Nope, no recall. Next Shane. Now here's the timeline for Mr. Jones. When we play his video, you'll see he was up in Utah on some kind of hunting or fishing trip when he got sick. This is Blaine Jones, the person who made the concentrate. So October 5th, he's up there. Next, Shane. October 15th, the customer complaints were routed to this Anthony Brown guy. Next. Mr. Jones posted a GoFundMe. He wanted people to pay for his hospitalization. So that's the date he put the GoFundMe up. Next. And then this is when he had the meeting with Mr. Randolph, again, the former vice president of sales, who begged him to do a recall. Next. So October, no recall. November, no recall. December, no recall. February, no recall. March, FDA comes to town. Oh, recall. Recall. So they delayed 5 full months to do a recall. Next, Shane. And why is that important? Okay, why is that important? Because after that time period, October 15th, again, that's the day they assigned this guy to handle all the complaints, Anthony Brown. 10 days after Blaine Jones got sick, at about the same time, Mr. Randolph's begging them to do a recall. After that time, 9 of these plaintiffs got sick. Okay, Monica got sick in December. Hunter, November 15th. Pam, November 12th. Adair, November 4th. Vincent, November 19th. Carla, November 13th. Sherry, November 19th. Brandy, December 3rd. And Taquante, he got his liver transplant in June. If they had done a timely recall in October of 2020, none of these people would have got sick. None of them would have got sick. And that is the fourth reason why we think there should be punitive damages. Again, this is Mr. Randolph. That's his picture. Go ahead, Shane. Put them all up, Shane. I think I've covered all these. He knew people getting sick. He was the vice president of sales. He went there. He begged him to do a recall. Told him it has to be the water. And they didn't do a recall. Next. These are the months they waited. October, November, December, January, February. No recall. Next, Shane. I mean, look at the dates again. After they should have started the recall. After. And what really bothers me about this is Blaine Jones was told. He was told that he may need a liver transplant. So he knew how serious this problem was. Go ahead, Shane.
Okay. And they said what they did know was if I had gotten worse, the only option was a liver transplant, unquote. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And did they discuss a liver transplant with you?
Yeah, a specialist came in and he said that there was a short amount of time where he was debating whether or not to send me to California for a liver transplant.
So, he was told he may need a liver transplant, gets out of the hospital, goes back to work, and what does he do? He starts a GoFundMe page so he can make money to pay his bills. Doesn't do a recall, despite being begged to do a recall, despite knowing the problem, knowing the exact problem, and we think that that was wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Last point, fifth point, why they should be held liable for punitive damages. So the FDA went out to the plant. They found 5 critical food safety violations, and I'm going to go through this pretty quick. Okay. 1, didn't have a written food safety plan. Dr. Hudson explained to you that when you make a water food product, you should have a safety plan. 2, they didn't do a hazard analysis to identify reasonably foreseeable hazards, such as the hydrazine. They didn't validate their process controls. They didn't have monitoring records. Didn't have records at the plant to show the FDA. These are serious problems. And Dr. Hutt's going to go through them with you. Now, let's flip off punitive damages and let's talk about damages a little bit. Okay. Back to the liver function test. Shane? Again, I've showed you this a couple times. I just want normal ALT 78, normal AST 27. Next, Shane. Here are the plaintiffs' ALT and ASTs. Okay, you don't have to worry about writing this down. There's going to be some kind of exhibit that has this for you. But look at these. I already showed you the normal, the 27, 78. Okay, let's start with the 27. That's ALT. 2,000, 621, 602. Look at these levels. They're unbelievable. And the AST, again, normal, it was 78. Look at how high these are. Just unbelievable. You know? We've talked about liver transplant. Let's skip over that, Shane. Let's go to Dr. Burke's paper. Okay, so the scientists up there at Loma Linda, Stanford, they had a number of people that took real water, including Daisy Wee, one of the plaintiffs. She's one of the people that's discussed in this article. So they took all the liver biopsies and they looked at them. Shane, next. And again, the liver biopsy, they stick the needle in. Go ahead, Jen. Go ahead. Skip through that. I think I've said that all. Okay. Bridging fibrosis. We talked about scarring on the inside of the liver. Okay. That's bridging fibrosis, or if it gets worse, it's cirrhosis. So that's very rare in young children or adults. Very rare. So 6 of the plaintiffs in this case had liver biopsies. 6 of them had the needle stuck in them. Go ahead, Shane. And this is from the Loma Linda picture. Okay, remember I told you that blue is bad? Blue means scarring. Look at these on the right. I think the top right's Daisy's. But some of these don't look too bad. Daisy is the only plaintiff in this group of 4. But look at the blue. Look at the blue. Next, Shane. So these are the 6 plaintiffs that had the liver biopsies. Next, Shane. And I've showed you this. Again, the blue is bridging fibrosis. Permanent scars inside the liver. Shane? Okay, let me explain a little bit about how the liver works. Okay? When fluid goes into the liver, it goes through these things called ports. Okay? So the idea is it kind of cleans whatever goes in, and then it exits through these ports. And so it looks kind of like a basketball with a little hole in it. That hole is a port. Okay, that's what the fluid is exiting from. So what happens when you have a toxin, especially something like rocket fuel, when you have a toxin in there, it blocks the port. Go ahead, Shane. So I'm having Shane depict what happens when you block ports. So that part of the liver is not working anymore. Now the rest of the liver is still working, but you have blocked ports. And that's what's called bridging fibrosis or cirrhosis. A permanent scar that doesn't go away, that maybe it's not causing you problems now, but as you get older, it will cause problems. And that's what Dr. Hudson is going to talk about at length. Next, Shane. Again, this is Daisy's. Go ahead. So we're going to call Dr. Dat now. He lives in San Diego. He's a board-certified pathologist. Shane. So he's going to explain what pathologists look for in these tissue slides to find permanent damage like bridging fibrosis or cirrhosis. You know, basically they take the trichome stain and they look for blue. That's a quick way to do it. It's a little more detailed. So he looked at the slides from one of the 5 babies. And the reason we looked at one of the 5 baby slides is, you know, you can't argue that a 22-month-old baby has permanent scarring from some other reason, right? So it's a good example of what happens when you drink bottled water with rocket fuel in it. He found cirrhotic nodules in that baby's tissue slide, permanent injury. So he took that slide, go ahead, and he comparing that to Daisy's slide, okay? And again, Daisy was the one in the Loma Linda article, and she's the one whose slide I've showed you a couple times. And he's going to explain that Daisy has bridging fibrosis or cirrhosis. You know, there's a scale, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 4. But anyway, he's going to talk about the pathology findings and the slides from the other plaintiffs. And the reason that's important is this is a permanent injury. This is a permanent liver injury that we're talking about here. And that's what the pathologist and Dr. Hudson is going to tell you. Go ahead, Shane. Here's Dr. Hudson. He looked at all the medical records. He's going to say they all got liver injury from real water, and that's not disputed. He's going to talk about how hydrazine can cause the bridging fibrosis and the cirrhosis and the consequences of that. Okay? It looks pretty much the same, Shane. Okay. Again, that's Daisy's. Go ahead. So, these are the key points, I think, on compensatory damages. 1, real water had hydrazine in it, the rocket fuel. No dispute about that. Okay. 2, hydrazine causes acute liver failure. No dispute about that. 3, all the plaintiffs had serious liver injury. I don't think there's much dispute about that, but maybe there will be. 4, 3 of the plaintiffs, Mr. Henry, Daisy, and Lorenzo emergency jets to California for liver transplants. And one of the plaintiffs, who Mr. Parker will talk about in a second, had a liver transplant, had his liver taken out and someone else's liver put in. And I think that's it for me. Thank you very much for your attention. I know I went fast, but we're just trying to give you a little bit of an overview here. Okay? Thank you.
All right. Mr. Kemp, thank you, sir. Mr. Parker, you ready? We need a couple minutes.
Just need a couple of minutes, Your Honor, if that's okay.
Yeah. What we'll do, we'll just take a quick stretch break. How's that, Mr. Parker?
That sounds great.
Just, and what he's going to do is set up, and I anticipate Mr. O'Doul will do the same thing when he's ready to go. But remember, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report or a commentary on the trial by any persons connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio, social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. And lastly, do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with the trial until the clause is finally submitted to you. And we'll just take a quick break.
All rise for the jury.
She taking to the deliberation? And from here on out, we'll take him to the jury deliberation. When you're ready, Mr. Parker.
You may be seated.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's go ahead and set forth our appearances.
On behalf of the plaintiff, Your Honor, Teddy Parker, Will Kemp, and Eric Pepperman, and Deanna Swisler.
On behalf of the rural water defendants, Joel Levue and Eric Freeman.
All right, and Mr. Parker, are you ready?
Ready to go, Your Honor.
Okay, we can bring him in.
Yes, Your Honor. All rise for the jury. All jurors are present, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am.
You may be seated.
Do the parties stipulate to the presence of the jury?
We do, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, I guess we're going to continue on with opening statements. Mr. Parker, you ready to proceed, sir?
I am, Your Honor. May I?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, everyone. This will not be as long as the time we spent picking you guys out, okay? Let me just assure you of that up front. And going after Mr. Kemp is like Mr. O'Doul going after me. He's covered a lot of this already. But I'll try to hit some high points that I believe are important that we may have not covered already. I'll try not to be duplicative of Mr. Kemp, but I also want to hit some high points in terms of Mr. DeQuante Henry, okay? That kind of sets the stage for you, everyone. So let me first say that I believe the evidence in this case will be very clear that Real Water placed profits and money ahead of public safety. No doubt in my mind. And remember when I asked you about the burdens of proof, ponderance of the evidence, clear and convincing, and I pointed to these scales. When you consider the evidence in this case, and if you were to use this scale, Lady Liberty would fall on her side because of how much weight we have that supports a punitive damage finding in this case. There's no doubt in my mind. What is more basic in this world than water? You can live longer without food than you can fresh, safe, clean drinking water. We can agree to that. And Real Water profited off of, like Mr. Kemp saying, telling you that this was the healthiest of water. And not only for you, but for your kids. Now, when Mr. Kemp was giving his opening, he was mentioning all the things that didn't happen or could have been avoided during the 5-month period when the vice president of Real Water, the son of the owner of Real Water, after being hospitalized himself, refused to do a recall. And when he was saying that, I just thought about yesterday's process, voir dire process, when Mr. O'Doul mentioned the babies and how he said, if you can't handle hearing about babies. Those 5 babies got sick and were sent to the hospital during that time period. Mr. Kemp didn't raise it. He wasn't trying to simply impassion his jury. But I wanted you to think about that just from a time context and put it in the context chronologically. Had he, vice president, called for recall right then in September or October, those babies were taken in November and December, flown from here, flight for life. Those could have been avoided. I want you to consider that as I fill in some of the gaps. Second slide, I'm sorry. Now, you'll see this later in this case. You'll see it through the questioning of witnesses, through the documents that Mr. Kemp has already previewed for you, that Real Water showed a conscious disregard for the rights and safety of others. The infants I was speaking about, children, Mr. Abelese, he was a teenager when this happened to him. Adults, we have adults here, we have seniors here. We have pets that got ill and died. We had a woman that died. Not just pets, but a woman who died. All because of Real Water. And so, Mr. O'Doul said something yesterday that I thought was a point, it was well taken, and a point perhaps I should have made. We are all friends here. I mean, I've known Mr. O'Doul, like he said, for over 20 years. But I will tell you, that will not prevent me, Mr. Kemp, Mr. Pepperman, Ms. Switzler here, from telling you the true facts of this case. And it won't prevent Mr. O'Doul from telling you his client's position. Because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, like the judge said, you're going to wear the black robes, you're going to make a decision on the facts of this case. And I will tell you, as I pointed out in a moment, just how clear and convincing the evidence is that Real Water could care less about the safety of the people they were selling these products to. Now, Mr. Kemp wanted to show you this. These were the big 5-gallon jugs. These jugs, these liter bottles, they all came from this concentrate. And you'll see the importance of that as we move along. Next slide, Shane. So the rule of this case, ladies and gentlemen, is if you make it, you distribute it, you sell it, and it's dangerous, unreasonably dangerous and defective, you have to take responsibility for it. And all we're asking you to do is to hold them responsible. That's it. Hold them responsible for the compensatory damages, hold them responsible for the pain and suffering, which are general damages, and hold them responsible for punitive damages because of how little concern they had for these plaintiffs, for our community, and for people you'll see referenced in all of these documents. Dozens of people. Next slide. So Mr. Kemp hit some of the high points, but these are 18 complaints. And I want you to look at these complaints because I want you to look at the timing of these complaints, how far back they go. They start back in 2013, ladies and gentlemen. And I've highlighted some of them that just really stick out to me. You'll see this in evidence in this case. Oily red substance, 2013, October 21, became ill, 32 ounce bottles. Bottles with residue in the bottle. To the right of that it says, analyze most likely production of oil, offered to send free water. This is what strikes me as so odd. I struggle with this. I truly struggle with this when I prepare myself for this opening. When you're selling something that's getting people sick, why would you think it's a bright idea to give them more of that product?
Objection argumentative.
No, that's in the documents. It says, offered to send free water.
Okay.
Thank you. May 1st, 2014, strong chemical smell in 1 liter bottle. TDS is total solids. Reading of 26. Tested other water from store and control bottle, okay. That goes back to what Mr. Kemp said. They weren't testing for anything they didn't know. This is the whole bury your head in the sand. Let's not figure out what's going on. Let's just give them free water or use the same test we're using, but we're not going to test for toxins. We're not going to test for what's causing this chemical smell. That may actually affect our bottom line. Next, item number 6 here, May 21st, 2014. Gasoline-like substance in a 1 liter bottle. Bottle was very clear. We've all seen gasoline before. We've seen it in a clear bottle. It is clear. But if someone's telling you that the bottled water they're drinking is tasting like or has a gasoline-like substance, you do something about it. You don't keep selling it. And this is years before. Years before. Go to the next slide, please, Shane. Number 12, 2017. Gallon bottle smelled foul and tasted like chemicals. Mr. Kemp explained to you how this chemical reaction occurs through the use of these titanium tubes that Mr. Marlowe will explain to you he got from Russians that are from Russia, and these tubes are Russian.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
And gentlemen, thank both of you, all of you. And Mr. Parker, you may continue.
Thank you. And Mr. Marlowe will say that he met some Russians for lunch or dinner or somewhere and got these Russian titaniums because he was interested or curious or fascinated with using these titaniums to make this water product. That's what we're dealing with. Mr. Kemp was being very nice. He said it was bizarre. It was just misplaced. It caused these problems. So let's go to the next one. Oh, no, go back, Shane. Thank you. So Mr. Kemp spoke about Susan Dorn a little while ago from Henderson. This is number 13. Family, pets, and 87-year-old visiting parents getting diarrhea from real water. 2 pets, 1 kid, and herself and her 2 parents. Burning, sour stomach, and diarrhea. Rawness, cramping, and copious diarrhea. Offered to send free cases. How can that be the appropriate response to someone not only getting sick, but their elderly parents getting sick, their pets getting sick, and that's your response? That's your knee-jerk response. Next item. It says here, this is number 15, August 1st, 2017. and this person is buying it in Oregon. 2 bottles with fishy smell and taste, burned her throat for a day, stomach upset, gurgling, black tarry stools. Now, what you will hear, the evidence will support this. Our toxicologist, one of the experts, the toxicologist that we have will tell you, in high enough concentrations, hydrazine takes on a fishy smell, or a chemical smell, or a gasoline smell. You will hear that in the evidence. Number 16, September 6, 2017, deathly ill after first bottle of real water. Severe intestinal cramping, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, hot, and headache. Tampa Bay, number 17. This is September 15, 2017. Bought 2 1-gallon jugs, drank 1.5 gallons within 6 to 8 hours, felt sick that night, woke up the next morning with severe confusion, hand tremors, nausea, vomiting. Doctor says metabolic alkalosis. This is what Mr. Kent was talking about in terms of when you have a severe liver injury, your liver can't clean your blood. You get this resulting ammonia buildup in your head. You get confused. Some people can't even respond. This is what he was talking about, and this is what this person is describing. Number 18, November 11, 2020. This is the same time that several of our planes are getting sick. The same time period the children are sick and being flown to Primary Children's Hospital in Utah. It says here, canceling service, cleaning process, horrible, and made entire family sick. Ran tests on water and found bacteria. Anthony Brown, Mr. Kemp just spoke about a little while ago. I don't know what they're doing down there, Blaine is here trying to fix it now. That's the internal response to someone saying they found bacteria in the water that you're selling. If this doesn't show a complete and conscious disregard for the safety of the people you're actually selling products to, I don't know what does. And it went on from 2000, we got 2013 here, all the way to 2020, no new tests. Mr. Kemp said it cost somewhere between $100 or $200 to up to $1,000 just to run the test. And you're selling products from one part of the country to the next, from Oregon to Tampa. Next slide, please. Now, this is the establishment inspection report. Mr. Kemp spoke about this, and this was a combination of the Southern Nevada Health District, the CDC, and the FDA getting involved after the children were diagnosed with the acute liver injury. And you can see the start date, March 16, 2021. I wanted to give you that date, keep that in your mind, so chronologically you're following along what's going on in this case. And this was the first inspection. It says, participated in the inspection, and a Center for Disease Control toxicologist observed during one day of the inspection. So I wanted to let you know just how intense the investigation is because of how important the safety issues are. Next page. Now these nine items, Mr. Kemp has already gone over them with you, so I'm not going to spend a lot of your time. You probably remember seeing it a few moments ago. Move right along, Shane. This is what I wanted you to focus on. This is what the CDC, the FDA found. Management was advised that the FDA considers the firm's proprietary E2 alkaline mineral concentrate in the firm's finished bottled alkaline water to be adulterated under the FD&C Act due to the firm's failure to comply with 21 CFR 170, federal regulation. It is further explained that because the E2 alkaline mineral concentrate that is produced in Henderson is a common ingredient to all real water products, that means the big 5-gallon jugs, the 1 liter, the 1.5 liter bottles, common to all real water, brand bottled water products at all manufacturing locations, that all real water brand bottled water is considered adulterated under the FTC Act. Next slide, Shane. Now this is what adulteration means. A violation of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which includes products that are defective, unsafe, not shown to be safe, filthy, or produced under insanitary conditions. That's what this product was. That's what is considered by the FDA, the CDC, and the Southern Nevada Health District. And that's what got these plaintiffs, those children, that lady who died, those pets that died, sick. This unsanitary, filthy product. Next slide, please. So these are the 3 tests that you have in your books. These were the tests that the CDC and the FDA did that found the hydrazine. The FDA, the CDC, and the Southern Nevada Health District working together found this within months. They've had this product on the market for years, over a dozen years, and they didn't find it because they never found in months of the investigation started. Next slide. Now, I wanted to show you this, ladies and gentlemen. Typically, pleadings are boring. These are the complaints that we filed to start this litigation. This complaint was filed, you can see, by Mr. Kim's office, March 7th. This is 2023. It was originally filed in 2021, several years ago. This is the most recent complaint. Mr. Kim, and I think the judge said earlier when we first introduced you guys to us and we to you, that this case has been going on for over 3.5 years. Remember that? The case was originally filed in, and you'll see this in the next slide, in March of 2021. Okay? So this is 2 years later. This is the complaint against Real Water. And go right ahead to the next slide. I want you to see it. This is one of the allegations within the complaint. And the allegation is, number 122, this is a very long complaint, it says, defendants, that being Real Water, bottled water was defective and unreasonably dangerous, and that defendants failed to provide warnings about elevated levels of toxins in their product, the existence of which defendants either knew or should have known about. This is their response. Right below it, this is the complaint, what it says. This is Real Water's answer. They filed an answer. Mr. O'Doul signed this answer. And it says, answering defendants deny each and every allegation contained therein. Now, when we started this, Mr. O'Doul introduced himself to you, and he said, this is just about damages. Do you remember that? Not a year ago. A year ago, Real Water was denying everything. Next slide, please. This is another allegation. The top one being the allegation and the complaint, this one being the response from Real Water. The defendants sold bottled water products with toxins to plaintiffs. That's what Real Water agrees to now. But look what it says. Just a little more than a year ago. Answering defendants deny each and every allegation contained therein. Completely denied. Next slide, Shane. Now, this next allegation. Defendants breached the implied warrantability or merchantability when they sold toxic bottled water products to plaintiffs. Again, what's their response? To the extent their response is necessary, answering defendants deny each and every allegation. Everything that we've now found out to be true, they were still denying a year ago. Next slide. Next allegation. As a direct result of defendant's breach of the implied warranty of merchantability, plaintiffs have been damaged. What do they say? Answering defendants deny each and every allegation. Deny, 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 deny. Next. And this is what, at the end of their denial of all the allegations, this is what Real Water says and suggested that the court do. The plaintiffs take nothing by reason of their amended complaint, and that judgment be entered in favor of defendants. Not only did they deny it, they didn't want a plaintiff here to get a single penny. And they wanted judgment in their favor. Just a little more than a year ago. They wanted the complaint to be dismissed. They wanted to get all their costs of this lawsuit and fees. You see it here. And their fees. And their costs. That's what they wanted. Now, after 3.5 years, now it's just about the hands. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this slide because Mr. Kemp went into depth with it, but this is the Loma Linda report. Mr. Kemp refers to it as the Burke paper because he's the first author identified on this article. But I wanted to put it out here because it talks about the pediatric hospitalizations for 5 children right up front, and it talks about what the FDA did, as well as the Southern Nevada Health District and the CDC, to figure this out. And this is what really bothers me. While on recall, real water is still being sold through other online retailers. Five months go without a recall. The product's still on the market. People are obviously still getting sick. I don't know how that type of evidence doesn't scream utter indifference to the health of consumers and the public. I mean, that's what it just yells at you. Next slide. It says here, summary of the demographic and clinical features of the 4 patients, that includes Ms. Weed, is shown in Table 1. All patients had liver biopsies not consistent with viral hepatitis. And it's because they knew it was something other than that. Next slide. Okay. What I wanted to show, that I don't believe Mr. Kemp showed this. Some of these patients were only drinking real water for 2 weeks and had acute liver failure. That's all it took. These patients and plaintiffs never thought it would be water. Who would think it would be water? But this is what has happened because of that water. Permanent injuries seen through slides from biopsies. Now, Mr. Kemp told you blue is bad. And you'll see more blue in some of the other slides I want to show you. But I only want to highlight this because it mentions and it talks about the bridging fibrosis. Permanent injury to your liver, which will require monitoring, which I'll get to later, for the rest of your life. You can't undo it. And that's what you'll learn from the hepatologist who's reviewed all of these slides, reviewed all of the medical records, and will provide you with his conclusions. Next slide, please. So, as a part of the investigation, the FDA, the CDC, the Southern Nevada Health District went through and they actually interviewed real water employees. This is one of the real water employees here. According to Mr. Brown, the firm, that being Real Water, does not provide training on food hygiene and food safety to employees, and therefore do not maintain records of training. Now, if you want to put out a safe product, how do you do it without training your employees first? And why would you not keep records of training them if you were actually training them? And this is what the FDA found. Now, Mr. Kemp showed you the list of 9. I'm showing you the backup behind it. This is how the FDA came to those conclusions. They're going to this inspection, establishment inspection report, means an inspection of the establishment, saying, give me proof of training. Show me that you've taken steps to provide a safe product to these plaintiffs or to the community. Not only do they not have proof of training, they say they don't have any training. Next slide, please. We explained to Mr. Brown that under the bottled water regulation, the firm was also responsible for taking and analyzing bottled drinking water for bacteriological testing, specifically coliforms, at least 1 week in once a week, and chemical, physical, and radiological tests at least annually, and we were not provided documents showing the sampling and testing was done. Mistake after mistake after mistake. And I'm being kind by saying mistake. This is just complete, sorry if I can find a kind word, ignorance to what's required, or a complete effort to simply distance yourself from what's required. This is saying we didn't do it, we don't have paperwork for it, we don't have the test results, maybe we didn't know what was required. This, to me, shows complete disregard for safety. Next slide, please. The firm does not have an individual trained in food safety preventative controls was discussed. So not only were you not training the people, you don't have someone there to actually do the training. So no one's there. No one's taking responsibility for being safe or doing what's required to provide a safe product. Next slide. Now this is the core report, Coordinated Outbreak Response and Evaluation. You'll see more of this in the trial. I'm going to just give you a few highlights from it. It's a very lengthy document. It says here, 14 dogs and 1 cat were reported by consumers as exposed to real water. 11 dogs fully recovered, 3 dogs and 1 cat died. Now, the thing that's important about this is the investigation being undertaken by the federal government and the state government. And they're going to pull this information out. Real Water didn't do any self-reporting. This is the government digging in. The cat was reported negative for rabies, no obvious hepatitis, negative for microcystins, and cause of death undetermined. 3 dead dogs, a total of 20 probable cases at this point. Not just dogs, but people. A total of 20 probable and 5 suspect cases were reported with illness onset, dating from August of 20 to November of 20. 3 hospitalizations and 1 death. Next slide. This is one of the complaints that the FDA found. These aren't one of the 18 that I showed you earlier. This is something that was generated through their investigation. My wife and myself had consumed real water, alkaline water, as our household water supply since 2017. In November of 2020, we were both admitted to the hospital for acute liver injury. We had been vomiting for over a week and had become yellow in the eyes and skin. Mr. Kemp was talking about jaundice, yellow in the eyes. My skin had become increasingly itchy to the point where I was breaking skin while scratching. We were both so weak, all we could do was sleep between vomiting episodes. We were both treated in the ICU for close to a week while they assessed that we would need a liver transplant. All of our doctors were unsure of the cause of injuries. We were negative on every hepatitis test they gave us. We left the hospital without knowing the cause of injury. Last week, we came across the FDA's warning against using real water. Once again, we've been consuming the product since 2017, and we both may have experienced a liver injury in 2018. Remember Mr. Kemp was talking about the spikes in 2018? This goes back, ladies and gentlemen. When we had similar symptoms, which also went undiagnosed as a medical mystery. Mr. Kemp started his opening by telling you, why are we here? What is the answer to this medical mystery? Our experience is constant enough with injuries on record related to real water that I believe that my wife and my own injuries linked to real water. This is the kind of information they had, real water had, and still didn't prompt a test, a recall, a consideration of the safety of the persons purchasing your product. Next slide.
Action argumentative.
No, I'm taking straight from the evidence that's going to come in this case.
Yeah, good approach.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Real Water got this information through this investigation. Plain and simple. The way our media is used, the way they receive it. Says here, after drinking real water, I started to get extremely sick, throwing up, no appetite, fatigue, nausea. I kept a food journal so I was able to pinpoint to the water. Now that, who does that? When I read this, I said to myself, would I have even had, you know, the time or the forethought to start pinpointing what I'm eating? But this person did. It says, my PCP, my primary care physician, told me my liver enzymes were elevated, which Mr. Kemp has shown you those liver tests, AST and ALT test results. And my bilirubin levels were high. I emailed the company Real Water back in December of 2020, again, telling them even before the investigation, December of 2020, letting them know that the water was making me sick, and they did not respond. A friend of mine started drinking the water and got sick as well. Again, regular people, just like these plaintiffs, letting them know that their product is getting them sick. They don't even respond. That is indifference. That is turning either a blind eye or just simply ignoring the safety of the people purchasing your product. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not going to read this whole, because it's lengthy. But it says, been a subscriber to Real Water in Las Vegas area for 2 years. In November, my dog died. In March, my second dog was seriously ill. I've been lethargic and had many symptoms I've since learned are liver-related. On March 21, I was seeing double, could barely function, was rushed to the hospital by family. Liver markers off the chart. Ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman says he heard about the 5 cases. He says, certainly I'm the 6th. He's 57 years old, 225 pounds, and it took him a little longer to figure it out. But he says, and this is what I found really important, if this was found out about in November, how come they still kept selling this stuff? Well, we know why. Because as Mr. Kemp pointed out, they weren't going to stop it. They weren't going to do a recall. They weren't going to pull the product. They wanted to keep selling. And that's what they did, despite their customers saying otherwise, telling them how sick they were getting. Next slide, please. So this is the morbidity, mortality weekly report that Mr. Kemp read, showed you earlier with the chart. I'm not going to go over all of it, but one thing I wanted to point out, flip to the next slide. This talks about the 5 children and the hospitalization. You can see that at the top. And it talks about how Real Water offered a variety of products, including the 5-gallon jugs we've talked about, and the small bottles available nationwide in grocery stores and through online payments. I want you to have an idea of the scope of these savings. We saw complaints from Tampa to Oregon, just to give you an idea. I also want to point out, go back, this is the death. One patient, a woman aged in her 60s with underlying medical conditions, died of HUE, which is hepatitis unknown etiology. Related complications in November 2020. How many of our, thank God, our clients got sick in that same month? November 2020, thank God they didn't die. But this is what happened to her. She didn't make it. All patients with probable cases consumed water from 5-gallon size jugs before illness onset. Real water. Next slide. So that's the chart. Now let's superimpose on that chart our clients. Isn't it amazing how this is no coincidence, how they fall in this chart? You got Ryan and Pete, but back in 2016 with Trevor Abley, or right there in 2018, which we were talking about. So many concentrated in this area. Next slide. Now, we also superimposed, using a chart here, some of the complaints that I showed you earlier, 2008, 2014. But I want you to show two of the other items that Mr. Kim talked about, the failed HACCP audit, December 2018, and injuries and sicknesses since 2013 that we are aware of. Dozens in complaints, 25 to 30 complaints that the FDA found, a death, transplants, pets dying, all in the evidence. You will see all of this. Next slide. Important dates. So I told you, and the judge said this case was around since 2021. I want to give you the dates. 2021, March, is when this whole FDA investigation began. The inspection, I showed you that inspection report, March 16, 2021. So you don't have to trust me for it. You can see it. You saw it earlier, and I put it on this slide here. The recall 317, plaintiff's initial complaint that same month in 21. You can see the FDA test, 21. And I point these out because all of these things are happening. Hydrazine test results come back, they show the toxin. The MMWR report comes out in 21. We filed the complaints. The ones I showed you was the third party amended complaint and Real Water's answer in 2023. And even after all of these things have come past, they still were denying that they provided a toxic product and that it got these people sick. After receiving the test results, the FDA inspection reports, all the complaints, and they still deny. This is their expert, Real Water's expert, David Goldsmith. You will hear from him in a few moments. Also in March, 7 of 7 samples found hydrazine, 2 of which were not at the reportable level, 5 were above the reportable level. And then just 13 days before we met you ladies and gentlemen, the court decided that Real Water was toxic and defective and unreasonably dangerous. That's this year, last month, 13 days ago, 13 days before we met you. Then the trial began on Monday. Next slide. And in between 2021 and now, since that complaint's been filed, we've taken 97 depositions in this case. Next slide. Just showing you how much work has been done to be able to present this case to you ladies and gentlemen. These are our experts that we've had to bring in to investigate this case, to figure out what was going on. Because I will tell you, there's no evidence that Real Water will put on telling you how they figured this out. Because they didn't. Experts hired by the plaintiffs rolled up their sleeves and figured it out. Once the FDA determined that this product contained hydrazine, we figured out how it got it. Now, you would think that if Real Water was concerned about public safety, confronted with all this evidence, wouldn't they have done the testing? Figured it out for themselves? Or do you just put your head in the sand? Next. So this is the urethane testing that Mr. King spoke about. And these were the test results. I said 2 were below reporting level. They found it, but there was a set reporting level. So everything above it, these other 5 were above it. These were below, but they still found it. So I just want you to know the actual test results. Go right ahead. Okay, what's the next one? Now this is Mr. Goldsmith. This is Real Water's epidemiologist. And rarely do you get, and I'm telling you, I've been practicing a long time.
Objection argumentative.
You know, I agree with that one. I agree with that one.
Rephrase.
Mr. Goldsmith will say something in this portion of his deposition that you really hear. If you could, Shane. He's an epidemiologist. He was hired by Real Water, and he will testify that the FDA found the hydrazine in the concentrate. Keep going. He was deposed May 18, 2023. Just so you have a date. I try to give you dates so you know chronologically what's going on. Let's hear what he had to say.
Do you have any information as you sit here today that would tell us whether those retail bottles with the hydrazine you just mentioned had hydrazine above the toxicity requirement?
No, I mean, this is what they reported, and they should have had 0. The fact that they had above the limit of detection, at least 4, if not 4, at least 4 out of the 5 positive, says to me that, you know, I don't want to use this term, but this is the smoking gun that we, you know, concerned with the epidemiology and field investigations, and this matches up with what the FDA chemists found too in other samples of the concentrate that, you know, again, notwithstanding that there may be other contaminants that are detected or found, but this does appear to me to make it much more of a company-wide kind of a concern. And it says also to me that the 5-gallon containers appears not to be the only source of the contamination. This tends to give me a fuller picture, and it suggests clearly to me that the toxic exposure possibly leading to acute liver failure was not solely confined to the 5-gallon home delivery side of the business.
Thank you, Shane. Real Water's own experts saying this was a smoking gun, that all of their products were contaminated. This was May of last year. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no dispute. There should be none advanced or suggested to you that Real Water was contaminated, was adulterated, was filthy, and it got all of these people sick. It got dozens of others sick. It killed a woman, killed pets, and it caused liver transplants in addition to liver biopsies. Next slide. Next slide. So this is Dr. William Hudson. He's a professor of medicine and surgery. He is a hepatologist and gastroenterologist. He reviewed all of the medical records, and he will provide medical opinions on each of the plaintiffs. He is aware of the test results from the FDA as well as Eurofins. Go ahead, Shane. He will also provide opinions in terms of future care. I was telling you earlier, and I was using the biopsy slides to point out the blue color. You guys remember that? That blue color, of course, indicates fibrosis, permanent damage. Dr. Hudson will tell you that each of these plaintiffs will need to be monitored in the future, perhaps twice a year, with liver function tests, testing their AST and ALT levels. And he will also tell you the cost of that. Go right ahead, Shane. And he's suggesting that this will be done at least 20 years for each of these patients. Go right ahead. And this is the approximate cost, between $1,000 and $1,500 per monitoring visit. And you'll hear more about this later. I'm just giving you a preview of what the evidence will say in this, in terms of further care and treatment. One other thing I want to point out, Mr. DeQuante, Henry, I'll speak about a little bit further. He will need more medical care because he has now someone else's liver in his body. His liver is gone, as well as his gallbladder. And because of that, he's going to have to take, we'll see this at the next slide, I believe, he's going to have to take a lot of drugs, anti-rejection drugs, tacrolimus, mycophenolate. You'll see, and you'll hear Dr. Hudson talk. Right. Mr. Taquante Henry underwent an orthotopic surgery, and that happened in 2021, June 30th. We'll get to those dates. But he's a young person. He was born in 1997, graduated in 2015 from Western High School. He went into construction, and when construction slowed down, he became an armed security guard. At the age of 23, he went to UMC, and he'd been drinking real water, and was told that they were concerned about him suffering acute liver failure. Next slide. March 8, 2021. He's got the yellow eyes. He's generally jaundiced. His AST and ALT scores are high. He goes in, they eventually release him. 2 months later, he's at Mountain View Hospital. Same problem. His INR is 5.14. AST is even higher now, and his ALT is higher. By the time May 15th rolls around, his INR is at 5.9. His AST and ALT are staying somewhat steady. Next. He's released from Mountain View on May 18th, but he returns again, third time, June 4th, 2021. His ASTs are higher, ALT is higher, his INR is lower. He stays there until the 15th of June, when he's eventually transported to the Keck Hospital, which is the University of Southern California's hospital in Los Angeles, California. He's there from the 15th of June through July 7th, 2021. It's a liver biopsy. It's a liver conference where they have doctors, hepatologists get together and they try to figure out what's going on. They determine if you're water. He has a nephrology consult, another doctor, reading the records, decides it's real water. Because now it's getting out. Because the FDA has done what they've done. And now the physicians are hearing about this. He's diagnosed at 24 years of age. He's diagnosed with end-stage liver disease. They do the surgery on June 30th. Someone else dies. He's the beneficiary of that liver and that gallbladder. It's collected that day, that same on June 30th. Surgery lasts almost 8 hours. They start right after midnight, and I think 12:42, and it goes almost to 8:30 in the morning. Replacing, taking out his liver, his gallbladder, replacing it with someone else's. Next slide. And you'll see these medical records. This is the proof of the biopsy. That's correct. You'll see this is the consult. Just like I said before, findings are most likely related to acute liver injury related to real water. Next slide, please. And here is the blue. Something you do not want to see when someone has just done a biopsy of your liver. Next. All of that blue. Now this is not just, stop right there, Jane. This is not just fibrosis. This is cirrhosis. And you can see the nodules, because it's starting to form circles around, cutting off the function of the liver. That's how bad it was for Mr. Henry. Next slide, please. Too much blue. Next slide. This is how bad it was for him. They had no choice but to remove his liver. Next slide. And this is, again, like I said earlier, end-stage liver disease. Next slide. Surgery started over 42 hours in the military at 8:30. Almost 8 hours worth of surgery. Next slide. This is the liver conference. We have doctors getting together trying to figure it out. Discussed in liver conference 6/24/21, injury related to real water. Next slide. And this is him getting someone else's donor gallbladder and liver. So you don't have to take my word for it. I will give you the evidence. That's what you will see throughout this case. Mr. Kemp and I will put the evidence in front of you. You decide for yourself. These are the medical bills. And that's bad enough, but let's take a look at the next slide, Shane. This is what he has to look forward to. And Dr. Hudson will explain this. This is if he's able to do without someone helping him, because people who have someone else's organs in their body, they're susceptible to cancer, several forms of cancer, hypertension, diabetes, often requiring help at home. If he can avoid that, then it's going to be somewhere around 2.6 million. If he can't, closer to 3.7. Next slide, Shannon. And this is what happens to you when you have to get your liver removed. You won't be able to wear a bikini. But that's the result. And I try to bring some calmness or a little levity to the situation, but that is horrible. But that's what he has to live with. And that's not the worst of it. Go to the next slide. This is the worst of it. And this is something that the experts agree, both plaintiffs and defense experts will agree with this. The median life expectancy of a liver transplant patient is 12 to 15 years. He was 24 years old when this happened. If this is the case, he could be dead at 39. At 24, who wants to hear that? Next slide, please. This is Real Waters expert. And he says, the life expectancy of Mr. Henry has been shortened by the liver transplant. He agrees. Mr. Henry certainly would have likely died within a few weeks of his arrival at USC without a liver transplant. That's Real Waters expert. Next slide. Regarding life expectancy at the 10-year interval, one will receive a liver transplant. It's probably in the range of 50 to 55%. About half of them have died somewhere at 10 years. Half-life of a liver transplant patient is somewhere between 10 and 14 years. So plaintiff's expert said 12 to 15. Real Waters experts saying 10 to 14, which means on the outside, if we accept Real Waters experts' opinion, Mr. Henry can be dead at 38 as opposed to 39, because 50% of all liver transplant patients die within 14 years. 10 to 14 years. And that's what he says. That means that 50% of them are alive at that time period, which means the other 50% are dead. Next slide. He repeats that. Next slide. Now, this is a National Vital Statistics Report. This is put out by the United States government, and it indicates that the average non-Hispanic black male at the age of 25, now he was at 24, but we're going to use 25, it actually benefits me more when we do it this way, would have lived 45 years to 70 years of age. If you use Real Waters expert, he dies at 38. 32 years of his life will be gone because of Real Water. Ladies and gentlemen, you will be burdened as part of your responsibilities to determine what is 32 years of life worth. Each year, each birthday, each Christmas, each Thanksgiving. And to get that diagnosis, to get that projection for your life, that that's all you get at the age of 24 because of Real Water. This is what he should have had, and instead, he will be lucky if he's in the 50% that lives beyond 14 years of age. 14 more years, I'm sorry. And so this is just a slide that says that. Considering the expert opinions of Dr. Alcina and Dr. Hudson, the quantity will lose at a minimum 16 years of life, dying at the age of 54. At a maximum 32 years of life, dying on or before the age of 38. Next slide. Ladies and gentlemen, I truly appreciate your time. I've tried not to be duplicative of what Mr. Kemp said. It's a privilege and an honor to represent Mr. Henry, to help represent all of the plaintiffs here. Thank you again for your patience and your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. O'Doul, you need a little time to set up, sir?
Yeah, Your Honor, if we could.
Yeah,
Not very long at all,
yeah, whatever you need.
5 minutes at the most,
Yeah.
actually.
We're gonna give Mr. O'Doul a chance to set up, and we'll do the exact same thing we did before. We'll go back to the jury deliberation. If you have to go to the men's room, this is a good time to do that. And then Mr. O'Doul will start with his opening statement.
Yeah, you can leave that there. I'm gonna
You sure?
use those. Yeah, I'm gonna use some of those.
You want the water?
Yeah, I'll take care of it. Thank you so much. I will.
And ladies and gentlemen, remember, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report or a commentary on the trial by any persons connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio, social media. And I know you understand the social media prohibition. Last but not least, do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with this trial until the cause is finally submitted to you. And, ma'am, we can go back to the jury deliberation.
Yes, ma'am. All rise for the jury.
Feed you curls.
Listen, don't keep that bottle for granted.
No, it's heavy. Water's
Just
heavy.
tell it. Just tell it.
Water's heavy.
Don't play around, you fall over.
We'll go up to that. Are we ready to bring the jury in, Mr. O'Doul?
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
Okay, and we go ahead and get on the record now.
All right, come on. All rise for the jury. All jurors are present, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am, and you may be seated. Do the parties stipulate to the presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Yes, Your Honor.
And let's go ahead and note our appearances for the record, just to make sure it's clear.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Joel Adu and Eric Freeman on behalf of the Real Water defendants.
All right, and Ms. O'Doul, are you ready to continue, sir?
I am. I'm ready to
Okay.
proceed, Your Honor. May I?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good afternoon. Again, my name is Joel Adu. I'm one of the attorneys for Real Water. We had the opportunity to talk to you during voir dire, and what I said during voir dire, I think still applies. This is a very serious case with very serious injuries. These plaintiffs that are here in the courtroom, a lot of them were very seriously injured. In fact, nearly all of them. They were injured. They were injured because they drank Real Water, because Real Water had hydrazine in it. There's absolutely no dispute that Real Water has hydrazine in it, that hydrazine was the cause of these plaintiffs' injuries, and these plaintiffs are entitled to damages. The owner of Real Water, Brent Jones, gave a deposition. He testified there shouldn't have been hydrazine in this water, and there shouldn't have been. I'm going to talk to you about damages. I'm going to talk to you about what happened. But when I talk to you about what happened, it doesn't excuse the fact that it happened. A bad thing happened, and there is no excuse. The only thing that we can do to rectify that wrong is to compensate these plaintiffs for that wrong. And we're going to be talking about the damages throughout the course of this trial. At the end of this trial, it is our expectation that you're going to award damages. And I'm going to talk about many of the damages that have been conceded that Real Water is responsible for, or is liable for, whatever word you want to use. But before I do that, I do want to kind of explain how did we get here, and explain how did the hydrazine get in the water, and I want to explain what Real Water was trying to do when they were making this water. That doesn't excuse at all the injury that these people suffered, not at all. But I think it's important to understand how did we get here, and I think, frankly, I don't think the plaintiffs had enough time, Mr. Kent and Mr. Parker, to explain it. And they left out a few things in the interest of time, and those things are important, and I'm going to explain them. And I'll get into that in a minute. So before I do, I want to talk a little bit about the start of Real Water and what they were trying to do. So before we go to the first slide, there is something called Kangen water. It's water that has a negative charge. It's believed to have health properties. Many people enjoy Kangen water. Kangen water, basically you make it, you put a machine next to your sink. The machine runs a current through the water. It separates out the negative and positive ions. You get the negative water. That's supposed to have the health properties. The problem with negative water is if you leave it on your countertop over hours and days, the charge goes away. So the real purpose of Real Water was to find a way to keep the negative ions stabilized in a bottle so that you could drink negatively charged water. Mr. Kemp started to talk about, he talked about alkaline and base and pH. That's just part of it. The real story is the creation of the negatively charged water. And why were they trying to do that? Well, they were trying to make Kangen water that was stable and that would be portable, and they were using these tubes. Before I get to that, though, let me start with the story of Real Water. We go to the first slide. So Mr. Kemp talked about the purification system and how they were going about it. And as you can see, the water is coming basically from our right, and it's going to be going to our left. It's going through filters. They're filtering the water. This was a family business, or this is a family business, excuse me. The owner is Brent Jones, Amy Jones, and Blaine Jones. When the business first began in 2008, it was Brent Jones and his son Blaine Jones. Amy Jones is not Blaine's mother. Amy Jones met Brent Jones. Brent was divorced. He married Amy. Amy became part of the business. They believe in their product. They still believe in their product. They drink their product. We played you a little clip of Blaine Jones' testimony. You'll hear more during the course of the case how Blaine Jones took the water on this camping trip, drank the water, made him sick. He was very sick. Even after his illness, he continued to drink the water because he didn't understand the water was making him sick. So let's go through how real water was invented. Go to the next slide. The inventor was a tinkerer, John Marlowe. Some of us are more old-fashioned than others. I think the American dream in the 50s was to be an inventor in your garage and invent something and, learn to create something that would help people, that would make you famous, perhaps. John Marlowe was a tinkerer. He learned how to make this Kangen water, this negatively charged water, from some people that he met in his neighborhood. Yes, they were, I think, from Russia or someplace in Eastern Europe. And you'll hear his testimony, he was learning how to make this water. He experimented on himself, that's a fact. He flunked chemistry, that's another fact. He learned how to make the water. Basically, we'll talk about how the water was made. But the secret to the water, if you will, it's not really much of a secret, but how they made the water was they made it out of concentrate. So the first step in making the water was to make the concentrate. The concentrate was stored in these buckets for use in making the water. And how they would do it, and I'll get to the concentrate in a minute, was those big tanks that you see are used for manufacturing the bottled water, like the 5-gallon or the liter bottles. They would have these large tanks of purified water, and they would add the concentrate to these large tanks. So when the FDA came in March of 2021, and they took the concentrate, they sent it out to be tested. And when the concentrate was tested, it took a while. It came back in October of 2021. That was something that we didn't highlight for you. And that was when they found that there was hydrazine in the concentrate. So when Mr. Kemp and Mr. Parker say, yeah, all the water had hydrazine in it, yes, well, very likely the water all had hydrazine in it because the concentrate has the hydrazine in it. You take the concentrate and pour it in these big tanks, it mixes it around, they add some minerals, they add some salts to it, and that was how they made real water. Initially, John Marlowe made all the concentrate when the company started. Then he taught both Brent and Blaine to make the concentrate. Blaine then made the concentrate all the way up until the time these people were injured. Go to the next slide. So the filtration process, this is just some interesting facts. It's a 7-step process. And there's some chemistry here, and it can be intimidating, but the only important thing is that they're adding salts, they're adding minerals, they're not adding nitrogen, they're not adding something that should have created hydrazine. Hydrazine was completely unintended. You'll hear from Dr. Najam, who is the plaintiff's expert. He's got 2 theories as to how the hydrazine was created. He's not sure which one. The last time I spoke to him, he wasn't sure which one of the 2 was the more likely, or if they both caused it. But the fact is, he's not sure. But it doesn't matter. These people were injured. It doesn't matter. Okay? But if you look at all of this, all we're saying in this is a smaller version of the plaintiff's chart, is how the process is working. So if we go to the next picture, I think we have the mixing tanks. So these are the mixing tanks. The filtered water goes in one tank, the other tank is empty. You take the water, just like a, is that the right approach?
It's fine, yeah.
Thank you. It's just like a swimming pool pump. Okay? That's what's moving the water. The water comes from one tank. They hook it up to these tubes. These tubes are charged with a current, and why there's 2 valves is the water is being split. The negative water is going to go back into the empty tank. The positive water is going to go down the drain. And they have 2 tubes, so they can basically make a lot of concentrate at the same time. They manufacture the concentrate a couple times a year. It's not manufactured every day. And this was the proprietary, I think Mr. Kemp called it secret. This was the key to making a negatively charged water that would hold a charge, and this was what was the whole purpose behind real water. So they would run the water from one tank to the other through these tubes, run a charge through it. Negative water would go in the tank. So you start with 100, I think it was 300 gallons, then it goes to 150, And then from the 150, it goes back into the first tank, and now you have 75 left, and now you have your concentrate. And then the concentrate is used in the big tanks to make the water. So that's how the manufacturing process works. Let's go to the next slide, please. Again, not too much chemistry here. Hydrazine is a nitrogen-based compound. All that means, and there's a drawing of hydrazine, is you've got to have the N. You've got to have the nitrogen from someplace. I promise we're not going to get too deep into this with Dr. Nashin, but the question is, where did the nitrogen come from? Did it come from the air? Did it come from decay of the titanium tubes? He's not sure. He's got very complicated explanations. We'll do our best to break them down for you. Doesn't excuse the fact that there's hydrazine, but it's interesting to know where it came from. It was not expected. But again, that doesn't excuse the fact that these people were poisoned. Okay? It's information that you need to know. How did this happen? All right, let's go to the next slide. The company started in 2008. Blaine Jones worked at the company from the beginning. He started as a stock person, working the line, filling bottles. He eventually became the vice president. They were making concentrate. They were at a facility over at Desert Inn. That facility was bought out. It's now, I think, Area 51, and so they had to move. They moved their operations to two places. They moved part of their operations to Arizona. They moved the rest of their operations to Henderson. Blaine Jones was in charge of the move, so he was no longer vice president. He was setting up the lines at the two different places. He drank the water all the time himself. Blaine Jones has never heard of hydrazine before it was discovered by the FDA. Amy Jones never heard of hydrazine. Brent Jones had never heard of hydrazine. They just didn't expect it. When they set the company up, I'm going to return these because these are evidence. When they set the company up, they did the testing that water companies do. It doesn't excuse the fact that there's hydrazine in water. That was the testing that water companies do. That testing did not and would not detect hydrazine. Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. Should be. All right, so why are we here? We know what happened. These people were injured. We know that real water caused their injuries. These are the medical costs for all of the people that real water injured that are in this case. Trevor Abley, you're going to hear from possibly Trevor Abley. He is 18 now. You'll probably hear from one or more of his parents. They're very lovely people. Not their fault. They did nothing wrong. Trevor did nothing wrong. He was injured. His past medical bills were about $20,000. Trevor was fortunate. Trevor seems to have made a complete recovery. He's a very high-level hockey player. Does not excuse the fact that real water injured him. It doesn't excuse the fact that he's got pain and suffering damages that we're going to talk about, both in the past and even now. And this is true of every plaintiff. Every plaintiff that we injured from our product has pain and suffering damages that you will award for their past pain and suffering and for their future pain and suffering. They're going to have worry. They're going to have, some of them are going to have future doctor appointments. Some of them are going to have future treatment. Those are damages that real water costs and that you will award. Monica Branch-Noto, you may hear from her this week, $74,000 for her past medical bills. And when the different plaintiffs take the stand, they'll tell their story, because it's not fair for me to tell their story. I'm real water's attorney. Plaintiffs will have them tell their own stories, and they'll tell their damages. And why this is important is because you can look at their past medical damages, and then you decide, the blank page that we talked about in voir dire, you decide what's going to go in there. The court will already award these. These will not appear on the blank page. But you will decide the pain and suffering damages and all the other damages. Hunter Brown, he's been here every day. You will decide his damages. Pamela Brown, she's here. You will decide her damages. So all of these medical expenses, all they are is just information for you. And all of these medical expenses are injuries caused by real water. DeQuante Henry, real water caused his injury. Real water caused him to have a liver transplant. Real water caused him pain and suffering in the past, and it's causing him pain and suffering in the future. And you heard, the real water expert disagrees with the plaintiff's expert, and actually, everybody wants them to have the best prognosis possible. Everybody is rooting for these people to fully recover. But the real water expert, Dr. Alsina, admits that his life expectancy is more reduced than the plaintiff's own doctor. Okay, so when you go to fill in the damages, you consider that evidence, and you're going to put in a number that you believe is reasonable compensation. But dear Ita, his past medical bills are $229,000. You'll hear witnesses for Mr. Ita talk about his past pain and suffering, and you will be asked to award damages for those. Vincent Link. Mr. Link has been here today. He's a customer service agent for D.R. Horton. Very nice gentleman. He will come and tell his story. He will tell how he was injured by real water. Bradley Gray Maynard, the bully. He is a very nice gentleman. He will come and testify and talk about his injuries. He'll talk about what he went through. He'll talk about the fact that he was injured, just like Trevor Abley, several years ago, and he didn't put two and two together until he saw the stories in the news as to why he was injured and how he was injured by real water. And again, we're not faulting them for that. That's just a fact. Okay? Let's go to the next page, please. Carla Moreno, same thing, $110,000 of past medical bills. She'll tell her own story. Lorenzo Moons. Lorenzo was flown to UCLA for a liver transplant. Thankfully, he didn't go through a liver transplant. His past medical bills, as you can imagine, it's not cheap to get flown to UCLA for medical treatment. $133,000. Daniel Taylor, $197,000. You heard a little bit about Sherry Rasmussen and what she went through, and this is just her medical bills for what she went through. Stephen Watkins, you'll hear how his wife sent an email to Real Water saying he wasn't, his doctors told him not to drink alkaline water. Daisy Weed, $413,000. Randy Wan, $175,000. Okay. All of these past medical costs were caused by real water. There's no doubt, there's no dispute. We're not going to get up here and try to nickel and dime and say, you know, this charge is not, this is not. No, these are their damages that you will award. Let's talk about now the harder things. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. These are the harder things for a jury to decide. And that's why there will be doctors who will testify, both doctors called by the plaintiffs and doctors called by Real Water. You've heard Dr. Alsina, you've seen Dr. Alsina's picture. Dr. Alsina will talk about the prognosis of every one of these plaintiffs, just like Dr. Hudson will. And you will go back and you will deliberate, and you will decide who's right about their prognosis, and we may not be that far off on future medical costs. But you still may be asked to award future medical costs if they're too far apart. We'll see what happens when they testify. Past physical and mental pain, suffering, anguish, disability, including permanent injuries. These plaintiffs have suffered that. You will be asked to come up with a dollar amount for that. That's a difficult thing to do. Okay? As you hear the testimony, this is a compensatory damage that you will award. You will have to decide how to come to a number. The attorneys will likely suggest numbers to you, but here's a surprise. Everything that I say, everything that any other attorney in this room says, that's not evidence. The evidence is what you get from the doctors or the documents, or if there's a stipulated fact, then that's evidence. But otherwise, what we say is just to try and help you come to a decision. Okay. Future physical, mental pain, suffering, anguish, disability, including permanent injury. There is no doubt that some of the plaintiffs have future permanent injury. Mr. Henry, is obvious that he has future permanent injury. I think you'll hear from Dr. Hudson about this way having future permanent injury. They will talk about fibrosis and damage to the liver as a permanent injury. And the difficult part is you, the jury, are going to be asked to come up with a number for that. And it's not easy. And we're sorry that we injured these people, and we're sorry that you have to come up with this number. But this is the great thing about being a juror and the horrible thing about being a juror. You're going to hear horrible things in this case, and we've never tried to minimize that. And you have to come up with a dollar amount for them. Let's go to the next page. I think there's a couple more. Future medical monitoring. These people were injured by drinking this water. They don't know what the future brings. They don't know if they will have problems in the future. Future medical monitoring, there's a disagreement about the price or the cost. You may be asked to decide that. Maybe not. We'll see if it's resolved before it comes to you. Future psychological and psychiatric evaluation and treatment. You will hear about PTSD, and you will hear about the trauma that these plaintiffs endured because they drank real water contaminated with hydrazine. And you will be asked to render a number for that. You'll be given testimony from Dr. Bailey for real water and from Dr. Sands for the plaintiffs. You'll be asked to make a decision on that. At least you have some guideline on that. You will also hear about future healthcare coordination services damages. And Dr. Sands will talk about that, and he will explain that. Dr. Bailey will comment on that, and then you will decide the number. Right now you have a blank page, but we're going to do our best to help you fill in that page with evidence rather than attorney argument. So, finally, I don't want to minimize this. I think it's something that bears repeating. There is no dispute that when you have a liver transplant, it shortens your expected life expectancy. No one can predict the future. We hope for nothing but the best for these plaintiffs and for Mr. Henry in particular. But we injured him, and you will be asked to put a number to those injuries, and you will hear evidence as to how to come about that number. And what we ask for on behalf of Real Water, it's a lot for us to ask since we injured them, but we ask you to wait until you've heard all the evidence to make up your mind what those numbers should be. As I said in voir dire, this is a serious case. These people were seriously injured by real water. We ask that you make the best decision that you can make and follow the guidance of one of the best judges we have here in the 8th Judicial District. You follow the arguments of some of the best attorneys that we have here in the 8th Judicial District, and you come to a decision to the best of your ability. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to talk to you. We'll be talking to you further. Thank you.
Mr. O'Do, thank you, sir. And can we approach? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think this has been our first full day, and it's been a long day. And I think it's probably ready to go home. All right. I see some agreement there. Anyway, a couple of things. First, I'll give you the recess admonishment, and remember, you're advised not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report or other commentary on the trial by any persons connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio, social media. Remember, no Facebook, no Twitter, no LinkedIn, no Instagram, Tumblr, Snapchat, or any other forms of social media. And last but not least, do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with this trial until the cause is finally submitted to you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm thinking tomorrow morning, 9:15. How's that for you? Ready? Okay, and make sure you enjoy your evening. And have a safe trip home. And I'll see you in the morning.
All rise for the jury.
And lastly, will we have a lot of video depot tomorrow? Is that
Sounds like it.
okay? That's fine.
Your Honor, if I may, I don't know if this is a good time or maybe tomorrow in the morning before we start. But I know for the exhibits that have been pre-admitted and were stipulated to admission, at some point we need to read them off the list for the benefit of the court reporter and clerk.
How many exhibits are there?
It won't take long. I don't have an exact
Pages.
number, but
How many pages?
Couple of pages, probably 5, 6. It's up to the court.
All right. You ready? All right, she's ready. Let's go ahead and be efficient. We'll pick up 10 minutes. That's good to have because we'll lose it down the road.
We're losing our audience.
Yes, I don't blame them for this.
for plaintiff's exhibits, exhibit numbers 1 through 11 were all pre-admitted. Exhibit 13 was pre-admitted. Exhibits 14 through 16, we've stipulated to admit. Now, exhibits 17 through 41, these are all the customer complaints. They were pre-admitted under motions in limine, but Real Water, I think, wants to lodge an objection for the record.
Your Honor, it would be the same objection as
Yeah,
the
yeah.
motions on the
And the objections aren't waived for the record. I agree.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Exhibits 42 through 53 were all stipulated. Exhibits 59 through 88 were all stipulated. And Cory, if I'm going too fast, just let me know.
I have a couple questions, but I can either handle them now or go back over it.
It's up to you.
1 through 11, were those stipulated or were there objections?
They were pre-admitted under motions in limine.
I mean, you said the same thing about 17 through 41, but they had objections.
Yes, there were no objections to,
To 1 through 11?
correct.
Okay. And then what about Exhibit 13?
No objection to that one. The only one with objections that were pre-admitted were the customer complaints, which were noted.
Okay. And then as for the exhibit list where I write the date of admission, would I be writing that as today since we're going over it, or the date of the motions in limine?
I think today's date would be easier.
I
Okay,
would agree.
I agree.
thank you. Okay, we can continue.
Okay, exhibits 95 through 100 were all stipulated. Exhibit 102 stipulated. Exhibit 104 stipulated. 105 stipulated. Exhibit 106 stipulated. And then the following exhibits were stipulated: Exhibit 158, 159, 176, 177, 192. Let me know if I'm going too fast.
You're good.
216, 222, 224, 245, 262, 288, 291, 293, 308, 339, 351, 369, 370, 411, 418, 441, 442, 443, 446, 451, 466, 479, 485, 490, 508, 509, 845, and 846. And then on defendants exhibit list, we have a handful of others. 2053,
This is defendant,
yeah, I'm sorry if I misspoke, defendants exhibit list,
and these are stipulated?
they're all stipulated. 2053,
Is that the first number?
Yes.
yeah,
We started at
exhibit
2000.
2053.
2053?
2053. 2054, 2257, 2304, 2122, 2072, 2577, 2679, and 2700.
Is that everything?
That is everything.
All right. Okay, and so those shall be admitted. All right, anything else? Mr. Pepperman?
Nothing from plaintiffs, Your Honor.
Nothing from the water.
Okay, everyone enjoy your evening, and it appears to me we're on track.
That's the good news.